The Sustainable and Resilient Communities Working Group is one of the 14 groups under C20 and is focused on the areas of climate, environment, and net zero targets. Over the past many decades, billions of hectares of forests, farmlands, oceans, and wetlands have undergone constant exploitation and damage. According to estimates, every 3 seconds, the world loses enough forest to cover a football pitch. This, along with the rapidly growing greenhouse gas emission, our planet is in pace for a potentially catastrophic climate change. Natural disasters, cyclones, floods, forest fires, ever-changing climatic conditions, etc., continues to be an inevitable reality, with many people being forced out of their homes. The collective global actions towards tackling climate change have paved multiple avenues for countries across the world to make significant strides in the area. However, much work remains to ensure sustainable changes. Thus, to reduce the determinant impact that climate change has on human communities, the planet, and our overall prosperity, there is an urgent need to explore multiple avenues to design, develop, and deploy sustainable interventions. Driving this change requires urgent multi-stakeholder partnership between global civil societies to build long-term solutions, key synergistic research and policy formulations. The synergistic area of action identified by this working group are meant to facilitate dialogue and strengthen the voices of CSOs to address these issues. The discussions will revolve around a multitude of promising practices that ensure future generations are more resilient to dynamically changing environment. This C20 working group seeks to analyze and propose enhancements that are relevant and strategically aligned with both developing and developed countries to achieve climate justice. Along with this working group will seek to measure the impact of existing interventions that address and reduce the risks and increase resilience in the face of future climate environment crisis. We will look at best practices, strategies to reduce the tragedy of the commons through multi-stakeholder engagement and propose enhancement and conduct specific fine-tuning of policies that could strengthen the initiatives required for building sustainable and resilient communities. The inaugural meeting and the first networking event aims to bring several civil society organizations from around the world working in the areas related to climate, environment, energy, and sustainable development to a common platform to outline the objectives of the working group, highlight the focus areas, chalk out the events, and strengthen collaborations and build partnership. We also seek to engage in dialogues with respect to developing policy recommendations with focus on sub-thematic areas and best practices from the path-breaking efforts of CSOs and partner organizations in the G20 countries. The working group will engage with multiple stakeholder groups in dialogues and conduct several inclusive events to network with multi-country, multicultural organizations. We are also looking forward to conduct detailed and in-depth interactions in specific sub-themes to collect and articulate the voice of citizens and civil societies to G20 leaders and world leaders to build sustainable and resilient communities. This in turn will pave the way to build peaceful and prosperous communities for our common future. The working group will focus on the following 4 sub-themes: climate resilience and social justice, for which the coordinating organizations are Climate Action Network South Asia and Amrita Vidyapeetham. Environmental sustainability, the coordinating organizations are Amrita Vidyapeetham and Climate Action Network South Asia. Net zero emission management, coordinated by Vasudha Foundation and Amrita Vidyapeetham. Compassion driven approach for sustainable and resilient communities, coordinated by Amrita Vidyapeetham. The inaugural event aims to bring out the deliberations and dialogue on the various priority areas within each of the sub-themes. I would now like to welcome our eminent guests who have graced us with their presence. We have with us Ambassador Vijay Nambiar, Principal Coordinator, C20 India, the chief guest for the occasion. Shri Vijay Nambiar has served as the former Special Advisor to the UN Secretary General, Shri Ban Ki-moon. Prior to this, he was Deputy National Security Advisor to the Government of India and Head of the National Security Council Secretariat. He has also served as the ambassador to several countries in Asia and the US. During the course of his professional career in the Indian Foreign Service, he had served in numerous bilateral and multilateral appointments in Beijing, Belgrade, and New York. He was involved at the delegation levels in numerous UN and non-aligned summit and ministerial conferences since 1979. It is an honor to have Sri Vijay Nambiar address the gathering. I am honored to welcome you on behalf of the C20 Chair and the Working Group Sustainable and Resilient Communities. We are very happy to have Dr. Mrityunjay Mohapatra, Director General of Meteorology, Indian Meteorological Department, Government of India, who has been instrumental in revamping disaster forecasting and management in India post-2008 Orissa cyclone. Dr. M. Mohapatra significantly contributed to remarkable improvement in cyclone warning services by India Meteorological Department. His efforts are lauded by various national and international leaders. The recipient of several accolades, he has authored over 100 publications in the area of climate change, cyclone forecasting, disaster risk reduction, delivered keynote addresses in global events related to disaster risk management. It is a true privilege to have Dr. Mohapatra address the gathering. I am honored to welcome you on behalf of C20 Chair and the Working Group Sustainable and Resilient Communities. We have Sri Agendra Kumar, Managing Director, ESRI India with us, an industry veteran with over 3 decades of experience in the IT industry. Agendra has been promoting the use of geospatial technologies in the country. Under his leadership, ESRI India has partnered with various government and private organizations to execute critical and transformative projects using ESRI's GIS technology. Mr. Agendra Kumar has also served as the president of the Association of Geospatial Industries. I am honored to welcome you on behalf of the C20 Chair and the Working Group Sustainable and Resilient Communities. We also have with us Sampujya Swami Amritaswarupananda Puri, is the Vice Chairman of Mata Amritanandamayi and the President of Amrita Vidyapeetham. He is the head disciple of renowned humanitarian and spiritual leader Sri Mata Amritanandamayi Devi Amma. He has been living in Amritapuri Ashram since its inception in the late 1970s. He holds a master's in philosophy and is a renowned author and prolific speaker and has authored several books, including The Irresistible Attraction of Divinity in 2019 and The Color of Rainbow, Compassionate Leadership in 2014, as well as Amma's biography. He is a magnificent singer and a composer of bhajans and has traveled around the world more than 30 times with Amma in her service. It is a true blessing to have Swamiji address the gathering. I am honored to welcome you on behalf of the C20 Chair and the Working Group Sustainable and Resilient Communities. I would like to welcome Professor Vinod Menon, International Coordinator, Sustainable and Resilient Communities Working Group. Dr. Vinod Menon is the founding member of the National Disaster Management Authority. We also have with us Dr. Adi Shivan, International Coordinator of the Working Group. A hearty welcome to all members of the International Executive Committee, Professor Rajiv Shah, Sri Salim ul Haq, Sri Sanjay Vasisht, and Sri Puji Pujino. A hearty welcome to the members from Climate Action Network South Asia and Vasudha Foundation, and all members of various civil society organization partners, and all the participants who have joined us today from multiple countries around the world. We hope that the inaugural session paves way to strengthen dialogues between CSOs and is a great starting point for our journey towards C20 India 2023. I'm honored to welcome everyone who has graced the occasion on behalf of C20 Chair and the Working Group Sustainable and Resilient Communities. Before I end, I would like to quote Amma's words here as a wake-up call for all of us to strive for a better tomorrow. Amma says, we are not isolated islands. We are connected to each other like links on a chain. Our actions influence others whether we are aware of it or not. Due to the lack of awareness, unknowingly we exploit our resources. We forget to conserve. We develop materials which are not biodegradable. All this we initiate since we are thinking of us only. We forget we are connected network and we need to think and serve others. Let us pray that God's grace will shower on all of us to bring in the awareness in each of us to serve the world and spread love and light for world peace. Thank you all and welcome you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maneesha. I joined Dr. Maneesha in welcoming all the delegates and esteemed personalities here. Now it's time to move on to the inaugural address. To deliver the inaugural address, I would be kindly inviting Shri Vijay Nambiar ji, who's the Principal Coordinator C20 under the G20. As Dr. Maneesha already had wonderful words to introduce Vijay sir, there are a few other details I would wish to add. Shri Vijay K. Nambiar ji joined the Indian Foreign Services in 1967. He studied Chinese in Hong Kong and served in China from 1970 to 72 and returned to South Block and Udyog Bhavan by 1976. He was then served as the first secretary in Tito's Yugoslavia. He was posted from 1979 to 82 in the Indian mission at the United Nations in the New York and served in Delhi during the 1983 NAM summit and after. From 1985 to 1987, he was India's ambassador in Algeria. He returned to Delhi as Joint Secretary East Asia in the Ministry of External Affairs in 1987 and helped prepare for Rajiv Gandhi's historic visit to China in 1988. Subsequently, he served as India's ambassador, High Commissioner in Afghanistan from 1990 to 1992, in Malaysia from 1993 to 1996, in China from 96 to 2000, in Pakistan from 2000 to 2001, and a permanent representative to the United Nations in New York from 2002 to 2004. Post-retirement, Sir has served as Deputy National Security Advisor of India from 2004 to 2006. He was then deputed by the Government of India to serve the United Nations Secretariat as Under Secretary General Special Advisor to the Secretary General Kofi Annan 2006-2007. And then as the Chief of Cabinet to the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon from 2007 to 12, as Dr. Maneesha mentioned, and later on as advisor on Myanmar from 2012 to 2016. In fact, it is great honor, sir, and extreme privilege and immense pleasure to have you deliver the inaugural address to this session over here. Sir, may I kindly invite you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was quite a mouthful. I'm sorry to have inflicted so much time. Thank you. I'm honored to participate today at this inaugural session of the Climate, Environment and Net Zero Target Working Group. India's presidency of the G20 comes at a time of unprecedented activity and dynamism for India and is a recognition of the important contribution we are making today to the management of affairs of our global community. In pursuing the theme of One Earth, One Family, One Future, we recognize the need to bring back what some would call the passion and credibility, as well as the purity of purpose of the multilateral process, and to proceed beyond the material expectations of the global agenda and harness India's wider capabilities to our global agenda. As chair of the C20, Amma exemplifies a vision of civil society where the individual and family, as well as society, markets, and the state understand their respective roles in a new light, where each works not in competition or conflict with each other, but rather to supplement the other in pursuit of an overall harmony. As she sees it, the foundational approach to all relationships should be the principles of unity, solidarity, and compassion. The work of India's civil society groups cut across a multitude of sectors, including healthcare, disaster relief, infrastructure, diversity and civic space, support for those living in extreme poverty, the disabled, the vulnerable, women's empowerment, environmental sustainability, leveraging of technology, and much more. It demonstrates a truly holistic approach. As you are aware, we have set up 14 working groups under the C20, and they are set up in accordance with the so-called Osaka principles, representing both the continuity in our global concerns as well as newer priorities of relevance to a changing world, as well as reflecting the concerns this time of the host country, India. India's civil society organizations play an integral role both in the urban and rural contexts to undergird the social fabric of the community and helping it to address issues that are not otherwise satisfactorily addressed by the market or by the state. In today's era where technology needs to be leveraged to improve the quality of human lives across all levels of the spectrum, and not just to selected sections of the population, civil society must play an important role both in promoting the embrace of technology as also in dealing with its more deleterious side effects that may be imprinted on the lives of people. The onslaught of climate change has placed many species of life in our planet close to extinction and also threatens the entire ecosystem. Unless we take collective global action to tackle this crisis, naturally our very survival will be under threat. The need for countries across the world to make significant strides in many areas, including net zero commitments, remains one of critical urgency. And there is much work that remains to be done to ensure sustainable change. Our Prime Minister recognized this imperative when he proactively accepted a commitment for India at Glasgow to a net zero status by 2070. Driving this change globally will, however, require multi-stakeholder partnerships, as Maneesha said, between civil societies to build long-term solutions. As she also said, to provide synergy in our research and to evolve relevant and realistic policy formulations. While we need to integrate indigenous and local knowledge into our interventions and incentivize capacity building frameworks for better governance, it is critical at the same time for us to ensure that our policies are inclusive of everyone, especially the most marginalized communities. This will, of course, necessitate the use of innovative technologies to develop sustainable and resilient communities, which is the subject of this working group, and to allow continued knowledge sharing and transboundary collaboration across local, national, and global levels. We need to make community resilience a reality for all, including at the last mile level. As was said at a recent public discourse in Davos just last week, where two Indian central government ministers and a leading Indian business personality spoke, what is needed is to unleash, quote, the tenacity of technology, the audacity of governance, and the resilience of society. While a worldwide push to increase energy efficiency is a recognized imperative, and we recognize that we must improve our annual energy intensity by about 3 times the average rate achieved over the last 2 decades, our net zero emission pathways must also become almost 40% larger than it is today. And at the same time, we must use much less energy. We all know that this will call for considerable scaling up of renewable resources like solar and wind during this decade, reaching annual additions of almost 4 times the 2020 level at least. Also, use of electrical vehicles must go from around 5% of global sales to more than 60% by 2030. All this will call for substantial innovation over the next decade, not only through research and development and demonstration, but through actual deployment. This means we will need large-scale construction of infrastructure, especially in areas like what I think Maneesha has also talked elsewhere, advanced batteries, hydrogen electrolyzers, direct air capture and storage. Above all, governments will need to ensure that its clean energy transitions are people-centered and inclusive. This is the message of compassion which Amma has talked about. This is, in fact, the unmentioned SDG, as it were. For rich countries achieving net zero emissions, it will be impossible to do so without international cooperation. For developing countries, it will likewise be impossible without international assistance, technical and financial support to ensure deployment of key technologies and infrastructure. Therefore, without greater international cooperation globally, CO2 emissions will not fall to net zero. Funding supports for net zero transition efforts has thus far been primarily through bank loans, which have generally for short tenures and with rigid requirements of collaterals and things like that. To support net zero targets, the market will need to respond with what is called longer dated blended equity and debt structures. This only by providing adequate financial support for the net zero transition, especially of SMEs, which are key, they play a significant role in the economy. Unless they are also looked at, we will find the goal very difficult to attain. At a recent Voice of the Global South Summit, Prime Minister Modi had this to say. He said, "We, the Global South, have the largest stakes in the future. 3/4 of humanity live in our countries." He called upon the Global South to respond to the challenges it faces by framing what he called an inclusive and balanced international agenda that recognizes that the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities applies to all global challenges. As he underlined it, this also meant respecting the sovereignty of all nations, the rule of law, and peaceful resolution of differences and disputes, and the reform of international institutions, including the United Nations, to make them more relevant. At the Global South meeting, India showcased a lot of its own achievements in various areas like vaccine development, biometric identification, digital public goods, financial inclusion, digital governance, and most interestingly, of last mile connectivity. India's initiatives to encourage the ISA and the CDRI, and also to alter lifestyles, LIFE as they say, is aimed at realistic goal setting without depending only on the developed world to fund the future of the globe. We in India are committed to sharing our development experience with the Global South. Our partnerships cover all geographies and diverse sectors. We supplied medicines and vaccines to over 100 countries during the pandemic. India has also stood for greater role of developing countries in determining our common future. The 4 sub-themes you have chosen for your deliberations today are therefore absolutely timely and apposite. As you proceed with your substantive discussions, you will, I hope, consolidate your findings into a succinct policy brief and come up with good examples or udaharans from the ground also. These could then be presented to our C20 summit in July and thenceforward to the G20 summit itself in September. I would like to felicitate all of you and wish you all success in your deliberations. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, sir, for indeed that comprehensive and visionary approach to the working group's work. Thank you so much. And no elaborate introduction could justify the amount of reciprocation we got in terms of this vision and knowledge. Thank you so much, sir. It is time, in fact, to have a greater, closer approach to Amma's vision and message through a short video, which explains the larger dimensions of the work that we are doing. Can I please request for the video?
ഇപ്പോൾ കാരുണ്യമാണേലും ജ്ഞാനമില്ലെങ്കിൽ അത് നമുക്കും മറ്റുള്ളവർക്കും സമൂഹത്തിന് ദോഷമേ ഉണ്ടാവുള്ളൂ. സേവനമെന്ന മതം ഫലവത്താണെങ്കിൽ വേഗബുദ്ധി ആവശ്യമാണ്. ഇപ്പോൾ ഒരു കുരങ്ങൻ ഒരു പുഴ തീരത്തിരിക്കുകയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഒരു മീനിങ്ങനെ ചാടി കളിക്കുകയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ കുരങ്ങിന് തോന്നി കഷ്ടമേ ഈ മീൻ കരയ്ക്ക് ചാടി വിടാൻ വേണ്ടി ശ്രമിക്കുകയായിരിക്കും. അരവ് തോന്നി ആ മീനെ ചാടി പിടിച്ച് കരയ്ക്കിട്ട് നിമിഷം കൊണ്ടത് മരിച്ചുപോയി. ഈ കുരങ്ങ് ആദ്യം ഈ മത്സ്യത്തോട് ചോദിക്കും നിന്നെ രക്ഷിക്കട്ടെ എന്ന് ചോദിച്ചാൽ അത് പറഞ്ഞു എന്നെ കരയ്ക്ക് വീണാൽ ഞാൻ മരിച്ചു പോയെന്ന്. അതുപോലെ മരച്ചറിയാൻ ശ്രമിച്ചില്ല. ആ ജ്ഞാനം, ജ്ഞാനമില്ലാത്ത കാരുണ്യം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഈ കുരങ്ങ് മത്സ്യത്തെ രക്ഷിച്ച പോലാണ്. 100 യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റിയുടെയും കണക്കുകൾ നോക്കുന്ന അവരുടെ റിസർച്ചുകൾ, അവർ കൊണ്ടുവന്ന ഫണ്ടുകൾ, അവരുടെ ബുദ്ധിപരമായ കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെയാണ്. അപ്പം അങ്ങനെ വെച്ചിട്ടാണ് പ്രൊമോഷൻ വലുപ്പം നീങ്ങുന്നത്. ഒറ്റ ഒരു അപേക്ഷ, ഈ നമ്മൾ കൊണ്ടുവന്ന് നടത്തിയ റിസർച്ചിൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മൾ ചെയ്തത് സമൂഹത്തിന് എത്ര കണ്ട് ഉപകരിച്ചു, അല്ല എത്ര കണ്ട് നമുക്ക് സഹായിക്കാൻ പറ്റി എന്നുകൂടി ഒരു ഭാവം നമ്മൾ ഉണർത്തിയെടുക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ അതൊരു സ്വർണത്തിന് പരിമണം എന്ന പോലെ ആയിരിക്കാം. ആ ഒരു ഭാവം കൊണ്ടുവരുന്നത് എല്ലാ രീതിയിലും നല്ലതായിരിക്കും. അപ്പോൾ അതിനൊന്ന് ശ്രമിക്കുന്നത് നല്ലതാണ്. ഇപ്പം മറ്റുള്ളവരുടെ കാര്യത്തിന് വേണ്ടി ഒന്നും നിസ്സാരമല്ല. ഒരു പ്ലെയിൻ്റെ എഞ്ചിൻ ഇല്ലെങ്കിലും പറക്കാൻ പറ്റത്തില്ല, കേടുവന്നാലും പറക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല, സ്ക്രൂ ഇല്ലെങ്കിലും പറക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല. ഒന്നും നിസ്സാരമല്ല, അതിനും അതിൻ്റെ സാരമുണ്ട്. തേനീച്ച പരാഗണം നടത്തുന്നതുകൊണ്ടാണ് നമുക്ക് പല പച്ചക്കറികളും പഴങ്ങളും കിട്ടുന്നത്. നിസ്സാരമല്ല. ആ തേനീച്ച 3 കിലോമീറ്റർ പറക്കാനില്ല, പണ്ട് പറക്കുവാൻ, ഇപ്പം മെമ്മറി പോയി പോകുന്നു. കൂടുതലും പുഷ്പങ്ങൾക്ക് വിഷവെള്ളം അടിക്കുന്നു. അതാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ട് കാടുകളിൽ ഇങ്ങനെ പുഷ്പങ്ങളുള്ള ഇത് നട്ട് വളർത്തുന്ന കാടിനിടകളിൽ വെച്ച്, പിന്നെ തേനീച്ച കൂടുകൾ നമുക്ക് ലക്ഷക്കണക്കിന് ഭക്തന്മാർ ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ എല്ലാ ഭക്തന്മാരും ജാഗ്രതയായിട്ട് തേനീച്ചക്കൂടുകൾ വയ്ക്കും. നമ്മളെ പ്രസവിച്ച അമ്മ ചിലപ്പോൾ 2, 3, 5 വയസ്സ് വരെ മടിയിരുത്ത് ബഹുമാനങ്ങളില്ല. ജീവിതകാലം മുഴുക്കുകയും ചവിട്ടാനും തുപ്പാനും ഇടിക്കാനും അനുവദിച്ച അമ്മയാണ്. ജീവിതകാലം മുഴുവൻ നമ്മളെ പോറ്റി അമ്മ, എല്ലാത്തിൻ്റെയും പുരുഷശക്തിയായി. ആ അമ്മയുള്ള കടമ നമ്മൾ ഒരിക്കലും മറക്കരുത്. ഇപ്പോൾ ഒരു 10 നിലയുള്ള ഒരു കെട്ടിടമാണ്. താഴെ തലയിൽ തീ പിടിച്ചെണ്ണേ, അവിടെ നിന്ന് മുകളോട്ട് നോക്കി വിളിച്ചു ആരെങ്കിലും എല്ലാവരും ഇറങ്ങി വരണേ, എല്ലാവരും കൂടെ വെള്ളം കോരി ഒഴിക്കാൻ സഹായിച്ചാൽ നമുക്ക് എളുപ്പം ഇവിടുന്ന് രക്ഷപ്പെടാം, ഇതിനെ അണച്ച് നമുക്ക് കെട്ടിടം സുരക്ഷിതമാക്കാം. വെള്ളത്തിൽ നിലയുന്നുണ്ട് ആൾക്കാരിൽ സൈഡിലേക്ക് വന്നു. അത് എൻ്റെ മുറി വീടല്ല, അത് നിന്റെ വീടാണ്, നിന്റെ പ്രശ്നമാണ്, എൻ്റെ പ്രശ്നമല്ല എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ് മാറുന്നവരാണ്. ഈ പ്രശ്നം താഴ്ത്തലയിൽ പിടിച്ച് പിന്നെ അത് മുന്നോട്ടാണ് വരുന്നത്. നിന്റെ പ്രശ്നമാണ് ഭാവി നമ്മുടെ പ്രശ്നമാകുന്നത്. ഇതെൻ്റെ പ്രശ്നമല്ല എന്ന് തള്ളിക്കളയുന്ന ഇതെന്നിലേക്കുള്ള പ്രശ്നമായി തന്നെയാണ് വരുന്നത്. അത് നമ്മളെപ്പോഴും മനസ്സിലാക്കിയിരിക്കണം. ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ പോക്ക് അതാണ്.
പ്രകൃതി മനുഷ്യൻ്റെ അജ്ഞാനവർത്തിയാണ്, അത് നിർജീവമാണ്, അതുകൊണ്ട് എന്ത് വേണമെങ്കിലും ആകാം എന്നൊക്കെയുള്ള മിഥ്യാധാരണ മനുഷ്യർക്കുണ്ട്. പ്രകൃതി ഒരു ശരീരമാണ്, അത് ഏകമാണ്. ഒരു ശരീരത്തിലെ അവയവങ്ങളെല്ലാം അഭേദ്യമായിരിക്കുന്നത് പോലെ പ്രകൃതിയിലെ ജീവനുള്ളതും ഇല്ലാത്തതുമായ സകലതും അന്യോന്യം ബന്ധപ്പെട്ടിരിക്കുന്നു. അവയെല്ലാം പ്രകൃതിയുടെ അവയവങ്ങളാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ട് പ്രകൃതി സംരക്ഷണവും പരിപാലനവും മാറ്റി നിർത്തിക്കൊണ്ട് സുസ്ഥിര വികസനം സാധ്യമല്ല. അങ്ങനെ ഒരു വികസനം പ്രായോഗികമാക്കാൻ കുറേ കോൺഫറൻസുകളും ചർച്ചകളും സംവാദങ്ങളും നടത്തിയതുകൊണ്ടോ നിയമനിർമ്മാണം നടത്തിയതുകൊണ്ടോ മാത്രം സാധിക്കില്ല. അതിന് മനുഷ്യൻ്റെ മനോഭാവം മാറണം. മനസ്ഥിതി മാറ്റിയാൽ പരിസ്ഥിതി നമുക്ക് മാറ്റിയെടുക്കാം. നമുക്കെല്ലാം ഒരേ മനസ്സോടെ ഒരേ ലക്ഷ്യത്തോടെ ലോക നന്മയ്ക്ക് വേണ്ടി നിസ്വാർത്ഥമായി പ്രവർത്തിക്കാൻ നമുക്ക് കഴിയട്ടെ. നമ്മളെ പിന്തുടർന്നു വരുന്നവർക്ക് നമ്മുടെ പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങൾ ശ്രേഷ്ഠമായ ഒരു മാതൃകയായി തീരട്ടെ. നമ്മുടെ ജീവിത വൃക്ഷം സ്നേഹമാകുന്ന മണ്ണിൽ ഉറച്ചു നിൽക്കട്ടെ. സകർമ്മങ്ങളാകട്ടെ അതിലെ ഇലകൾ, അനുകമ്പാപൂർണമായ വാക്കാകട്ടെ അതിലെ പുഷ്പങ്ങൾ, ശാന്തിയാകട്ടെ അതിലെ ഫലങ്ങൾ. സ്നേഹത്തിൽ ഒന്നായി തീർന്ന് ഒരു കുടുംബമായി ലോകം വളർന്ന് വികസിക്കട്ടെ. വസുദൈവ കുടുംബം എന്ന ഈ വാക്ക് പ്രാവർത്തികമാക്കി എല്ലാവരും ഉണർന്ന് ഫലവത്താക്കാനും നമുക്ക് കഴിയട്ടെ. അങ്ങനെ ശാന്തിയും സമാധാനവും കളിയാടുന്നൊരു ലോകം നമുക്കെല്ലാം സായത്തമാകട്ടെ. കൃപ നമ്മളെ എല്ലാം അനുഗ്രഹിക്കട്ടെ.
Thank you so much, Amma. Words often fall short to summarize the video. Maybe we request Swamiji later to speak a few words on it. Please allow me to move on to the next session, where I'll request Dr. Mrityunjay Mohapatra, Director General of Meteorology, Indian Meteorological Department, Government of India, for delivering the keynote address. Dr. Mohapatra holds a MSc and PhD in physics, and with over 35 years of experience in prominent positions such as Director of National Weather Forecasting Center, the NWFC. Dr. Mohapatra's work on the improvement in cyclone warning greatly contributed to science as well as society in the form of better management of disasters. Because of this, he was awarded the Environmental Excellence Award 2022 during the World Environment Summit 2022. He received the Pride of India Award 2022 by South Asian Institute for Advanced Research and Development, Kolkata. He's also awarded the Most Inspirational Personality Award 2022 by the Interview Times at Bhubaneswar. Sir, can I please invite your presence to deliver the keynote?
Namaskar, good evening to all of you. Dr. Maneesha and entire organizing team of this C20 working group seminar. I am really grateful to the organizers for giving me an opportunity to speak on this occasion, especially with the blessings of Ammaji. I express my namaste and gratitude to Ammaji, and also the intelligentsia participating in these deliberations. As we look into the various working groups formed and the objectives, I feel it is quite befitting to address the requirements of the population, the civil society, and the humankind as a whole. As all of us know, India plays a dominant role nowadays in almost all aspects of socio-economic activity in the society. When you consider the global south, certainly India has the prominence, and it has been contributing to the welfare of the people, welfare of the region in all aspects. Especially when we talk of the climate resilience and development, it comes to our mind that sustainable development goals set up by the United Nations brings out especially the 17 goals. Out of those 17 goals, the 13th one is the climate action. The climate resilience development is the essential part of any sustainable development goal to be fixed by any country or any state or any regional body like G20. When we consider the climate resilience for sustainable development, certainly it includes mainly three important aspects. The number one, that we should know about the ongoing climate change in terms of its science. The science of climate change specifically includes the three aspects: the detection of climate change, attribution of the climate change, and third one is the projection of the climate change. You will be happy to know that in all the three aspects, India plays a dominant role. And the Minister of Earth Sciences has a center called the Center for Climate Change Research. And India Meteorological Department is one of the oldest organizations, not only in India, but also in the globe, for weather and climate monitoring. You will be happy to know that World Meteorological Organization is celebrating 150 years this year in 2023. to commemorate its establishment in 1873 as International Meteorological Organizations, which was later on called as World Meteorological Organizations in 1950. At the same time, you will be happy to know that India Meteorological Department was established in 1875 and is going to celebrate 150 years in 2025. So I am bringing out this analogy to tell you that the development in the country in terms of the climate science has gone a far away in parallel with the development in the world. India Meteorological Department is a signatory to the establishment of this World Meteorological Organization and is a permanent member of this UN body. Here there are 193 countries and India is a proud member of that. Further, India at present continues as a member of the Executive Council in World Meteorological Organizations. Therefore, all the policy plans, frameworks developed by World Meteorological Organizations is reflecting the viewpoints of our country, India. Being a leader in this region of South Asia, Southeast Asia, Middle East, it takes care of providing the information on weather and climate to all the countries in this region. As all of us know that there are very few countries, Asia Pacific, island nations, who are developed to have its own early warning system. So therefore they depend on India warning against the disasters or hydrometeorological disasters. To top it all, I want to mention here that tsunami early warning system of Ministry of Earth Sciences helps the many countries in Asia and Africa after Japan. Similarly, nations are being provided on daily basis with the various inputs to all these countries, the direct model input, model outputs, and also the post-processed forecast products are provided to many countries in this region, starting from Southeast Asia to Middle East and South Asia and Asia Pacific countries. We also provide the modeling framework and global model support systems to all these countries. Satellite, Insert 3D, Insert 3DR is available to all the region. Is a member of the coordinated group of meteorological satellites. By that way, we exchange as a proud member all the informations with the help of Indian Space Research Organizations. We also provide the climate forecast in terms of the rainfall, temperature, and severe weather for months to all South Asian countries and also for the region. We also have a WMO designated regional training center in India. There are 3 regional training centers in India, including India Meteorological Department and also University of IIT Roorkee, etc. So all these test centers provide training and capacity building to various countries in Asia and Africa and Asia Pacific island nations also. So what I want to say that there is enough scope to reflect the capability to demonstrate the examples to weather and climate services and hence to plan for the future climate and future Earth. We ensure the one Earth theory is propagated by our great nation. I just want to mention here that not only the service in terms of the provision of the supports to the country, but also the accuracy of the products, the quality of the information has also improved over the years. As Dr. Vijay Nambiar was telling, there has been overall improvement with respect to the information and communication technology, where India is a leader to provide support to many countries in this region. We also have growing technology with respect to the various instrumentations, which can improve further, enabling the small countries in the region to have the capacity for all purposes. So therefore, I feel India can be a leader in terms of the climate sciences, the climate resilience and hence provide the support for sustainable development of the entire earth in this region. I just want to mention here that for national understanding, India is leading now infrastructure coalition. Under that CDRI, there could be the overall improvement with respect to the meteorological and climatological observations, monitoring, analysis, forecasting, and decision support system and sectoral applications. India has demonstrated its capability to reduce the loss of lives and properties due to natural disasters like tropical cyclones. I just want to mention here, if you compare 20 years back and now, the number of deaths due to tropical cyclones as a single event has reduced from 10,000 to tens and twenties. Similar is the case with respect to heat waves and cold waves. We have also been able to minimize the loss of lives due to floods and droughts. From a food scarcity country in 1950, we have come off to a food surplus country with the help of various interventions in agriculture based on the research and applications. So it has been possible also with the help of the intervention in terms of knowledge, experience, and expertise to strengthen the capacity of the farmers, to strengthen the absorption of research knowledge by the farmers for their benefit. I want to mention here that which have been developed by India has created and being imbibed by many countries in this region, be it agriculture sector, or be it power sector, or be it health and hygienic sector, as it was told earlier. We have been the leaders in the country. We have been able to also provide the knowledge in terms of current status and the forecast informations for adequate utilization of these informations for socio-economic development. As all of us know, 5% of GDP is lost due to natural disasters, and 80% natural disasters are weather and climate related. So therefore, if you can have the minimization of loss of lives and properties through the impact risk forecast and expert warning, and hence a climate resilient information system, then certainly it can improve the socioeconomic conditions of the entire world and also specifically of G20 member countries. So for this purpose, if you just look at the success story of India, you will find that the success story has been due to 3 or 4 important interventions. One is the policy and planning. India has a very good, well-defined policy and planning in terms of Disaster Management Act, disaster management policy, and many others, which are the examples of many countries who do not have the disaster management policy and planning, and it can be taken as example for implementation for all the countries. The second point comes with respect to the early warning system. The early warning has been found. There are many countries where early warning is not in existence. Whereas if you look at India, for hydrometeorological disasters, we have early warning available up to 80 to 90% of its populations. So therefore, India can be a role model to improve the early warning system by the various countries. When WMO has given a call this year that early warning for all is the objective by 2025 to be achieved by all the countries, we can think about India, where we have already demonstrated early warning to the major sectors of the society. And therefore, we can lead with respect to that in the G20 member countries with our demonstration of successful examples. If you consider technology, so India is second to none. While adopting the technology, while developing the technology, while sharing the technology with others, we follow the principle of Vasudha Kutumbakam, and we very easily share and care with all the countries working with us, so that each and every country becomes strengthened like India, so that united we can better serve the society to minimize the loss of lives and properties due to various kinds of disasters. Another intervention, if you just look at, you will find that there has been a very good collaborations with various public-private organizations. The public and private partnership is very much essential, and role of civil society, therefore, is very much essential while going for the objectives as laid down in the working group for the C20. I'll just mention one example. The loss of lives due to tropical cyclones has not only been reduced in India, but also it is reduced for all the countries in Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea region with the advanced warning provided by India Meteorological Department to all the countries. So like that, there has been the South Asia transport guidance systems. There has been severe weather warning for South Asia and Southeast Asia and Middle East. And there has been many other products which has helped to minimize their losses and utilize these information for socioeconomic improvement. So there are infinite number of success stories. And also there is a well-defined vision and strategy by India in all the sectors, including the climate sectors. Therefore, when we talk about the climate resilience for sustainable development goal, certainly India has the capability, India has demonstrated, and India has the willingness to carry out this in a Vasudha Kutumbakam principle with all the countries. I hope if we look at especially the climate change phenomena, the climate change, though occurs globally, we have to think locally also. In each and every country, there is a role and provisions to minimize the sources, of greenhouse gases and maximize the sinks. By that, we can have a balanced environment and hence the sustainable development goal without being impacted by the accelerated climate change and its impact. So when you go for, therefore, the sustainable development goal, the primary informations about the climate change detection is being provided by India for this region. And also we have got the climate change science contributing the causes which is relating to this type of climate changes. So there also India has a role in terms of Center for Climate Change Research, and climate change projections are being provided with the Earth system modeling being developed by the Ministry of Earth Sciences. While coming for adaptation and mitigations, as it been told by Dr. Vijay Nambiar, there has been a tremendous initiatives by the country to adapt the new approaches in view of the changing climate. So there also you need a very well-informed decision support system, and which will be possible if you have good information about the detections, attributions, and the projections. So what I want to say that with the knowledge base available, the way in which India is proceeding further, the net zero emission target, which has been fixed for a particular period, is possible, and there India also can play a dominant role. With respect to civil society can also contribute not only in formulating the policy and plans and influence the government decisions and its implementations, but also it can work in micro level. The civil society can cause the awareness campaign, which can improve the capacity of each individual. When I say sometimes that there are two types of approaches, one is the macro level approaches in terms of the climate action plans of Government of India and state level action plans being adopted by each and every states in the country. There are also the micro level action plans, which is required to be understood by each and every individual. Each and every individual also can contribute to minimize the sources of greenhouse gases. By that way, the sustainable development goal. Similarly, each and every individual can minimize can maximize the sinks, and hence the greenhouse gases, the potential in the atmosphere can be reduced, and hence its adverse impact. There are many such examples. Say, it is afforestation, increasing the forest cover, or planting the tree by each individual, or removing the or suppressing the deforestation. That is possible with individual civil societies interventions. The awareness itself can help the people to minimize the use of various types of greenhouse gas producers like the polythenes and others. Similarly, the civil society can also help to have a sustained industry which can have the new energy developed in the country, otherwise adopted from other countries, so that we can have the minimization of the greenhouse gases generated by the society. So therefore, what I feel that civil society can play a dominant role in terms of not only the understanding of the climate change and its impact on the sustainable development, civil society also can ensure the sustainable development through awareness campaign, through intervention, through introduction of technology, through adaptation of the technology by each and every socio-economic sector. There will be a great challenge when we move from the understanding to the adaptations, because the occupation, the livelihood of the people will change in this changing scenario. Therefore, there will be a lot of intervention required from the civil society in terms of social sciences, merging of science with the social sciences, and hence convince the people to adopt the better society or better approaches to ensure not only our own generation, but also the future generations. So with this, I thank the organizer, Dr. Maneesha and Professor Menon, and everyone present here for giving the opportunity to speak on this occasion. I wish the event all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mohapatra sir. In fact, we are aware that there is a medical emergency, and we pray for the good health and speedy recovery, and appreciate that you took time out of all this. Dr. Mohapatra is also known as the Cyclone Man of India, who is credited with the reduction in the loss of lives in Orissa cyclones from 5 digits in 1990s to double digits only in 2013 violent cyclones. Thank you very much, sir. We are very honored to have your presence. In fact, Dr. Mohapatra stressed a lot on the institutional and technological approaches. It is a great coincidence, in fact, a very privileged, auspicious coincidence that we have Shri Agendra Kumar ji with us, who is from ESRI India. And he's the managing director of ESRI India and has been associated with it since 2013. He's an industry veteran with over 3 decades of experience in the IT industry. Mr. Agendra ji has been promoting the use of geospatial technologies in the country and an industry leader in the geospatial technologies. May I please invite Shri Agendra ji to deliver the address.
So thank you very much, Dr. Maneesha Sudhir, Ambassador Vijay Nambiar, Professor Vinod Menon, and Swami Amritaswarupananda Puri ji, for your kind invitation to me to join this event where so many eminent personalities are present. Let me start with congratulating and thanking Dr. Maneesha as the group coordinator for C20 Working Group for Sustainability and Resilient Communities. Bringing civil societies together through C20 in support of G20 is a great initiative, and I'm sure this will contribute a lot towards the leadership role that India has taken for G20. Climate change is one of the biggest challenges that the mankind is facing. The pace of this change and resulting deteriorating environmental conditions and global warming are posing threat to human race. But it is still not too late. Some concerted positive actions can help in containing the situation and possibly reversing it to some extent. I'm personally very optimistic that by coming together, we can win over this situation. However, tackling climate change and its likely impact require urgent, highly focused, inclusive, and action-oriented approach. And that's where I would like to talk about geographical approach. So geographic-based frameworks for understanding the causes, possible actions, and monitoring the outcomes will play a very crucial role in addressing the challenges of climate change and environmental situations that we are facing all the time now. The Paris Agreement on Climate Change and UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals refer to the use of GIS, space, and remote sensing technologies for addressing the climate change challenges. There are also a couple of frameworks which have already been defined. And I would like to talk about United Nations, the effort of United Nations Expert Committee on Global Geospatial Information Management, which is popularly known as UNGGIM. So this committee has released the framework called IGIF, Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, which leverages 9 strategic pathways that cut across governance, technology, and people themes to ensure better outcomes for society, economy, and environment. The other framework is the framework released by the the Global Statistical Geospatial Framework, which is called popularly known as GSGF. So that's another one which integrates statistical and geospatial information. So it's a framework for the world which enables a range of data to be integrated from both statistical and geospatial communities, and through its 5 principles and supporting elements, it permits the production of harmonized and standardized geospatially enabled statistical data. The resulting data can be integrated with the statistical, geospatial, and other information to enhance the understanding and facilitate data-driven and evidence-based decision-making to support local, subnational, national, regional, and global development priorities and agendas, such as 2020 Roundtable of Population and Housing censuses, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. So both these frameworks can be adopted by various nations, including India. ESRI, which was earlier known as Environmental Systems Research Institute, as a global organization which works with various agencies and countries in supporting geography-based learning to tackle various challenges, including the issues of climate change, environment, and net zero goals. ESRI's technology helps in creating systems for standardized data collection mechanisms, regular update to the data, creating platforms for integrating many types of data coming from diverse sources. This all is done with open standards, open data, and open architecture. ESRI India is also collaborating to support these initiatives. Open data for the status of various SDGs, which is available from various state government departments in the country, is being collated and published in the form of policy maps for India. ESRI India, at its recently concluded user conference, launched the availability of policy maps for India for SDGs and other key governance functions, and it's available to our users as a part of Indo-ArcGIS, and it can easily be deployed and used for understanding what actions can be taken to tackle the challenges of providing better health, agriculture, disaster management, natural resources, and SDGs, and few other functions. ESRI India also launched a mobile app called Carbon Aware to create awareness about sustainability and carbon footprint at individual level. So often we look at things at the country level, but when it comes to supporting the cause of climate change and reducing carbon footprint, I think citizens play a very important role, and realizing that this particular reason, we launched this app which asks people like me and you to enter some simple data like how much diesel or petrol we are consuming, how much gas we use, how many personal flights we take, what are the other consumption we do for various items of daily use. So looking at all that, it converts the personal footprint, and it can easily be accessed through carbonaware.in URL. And it helps us understanding what our personal carbon footprint and what we can do to reduce that carbon footprint. So awareness at personal level is also important. Thousands of people have used it from the time it was released on 3rd of January this year. This working group covers 4 sub-themes which are quite interconnected and could easily rely on common data sets. ESRI India will be very happy to be a technology partner in creating a GIS-based knowledge hub, which we can probably call it C20 knowledge hub, where all the relevant data can be collated, processed, and shared for the use by the teams working on these 4 sub-themes in various countries. ESRI India can collaborate with various stakeholders and create few proofs of concepts with access to all 4 subgroups in coming up with best practices, or udharans as it was called, which can also be adopted by various countries. On technology support, various mobile-based apps for data collection, its processing, hosting, and analysis and dissemination through maps and dashboards. Just to give you an example, various ESRI organizations in different countries earlier worked with, actually the main work was done by ESRI globally with Johns Hopkins University, and maps and dashboards were created for understanding and tackling the situation arising out of COVID instances a couple of years ago. And these were used across the world, and thousands of organizations used it to understand how COVID was coming up, what actions to take, and what is the impact of those actions. So as various ESRI organizations, so ESRI is a global company. We have entities in every major countries across the globe. So various ESRI organizations in different countries work with local government entities in addressing the challenges such as disaster management, management of forests, natural resources like water, agriculture, and health, etc. So the idea here is to create more and more collaboration. I'd like to sum up by saying that collaboration and creating intelligence through the use of data are extremely important for handling the challenge of the global climate and sustainability. We need to work together in addressing these issues through the use of geospatial knowledge, which is available today. Most countries had very flexible geospatial environment earlier. In India also, as a country, we took a major step on 15 February 2021 and made the availability of geospatial data very easy and open to everyone. So since then, a lot of work has been done using geospatial data and geospatial technologies, and this is growing by the day. And these technologies can really give us the understanding that are required to plan for action which needs to be taken, to manage that action, and to see the outcomes of every action which take. So we'll be very happy to work together in whatever can be done to support this common cause. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for opening doors to that technological possibility with this theme. Moving ahead in the session, may I please invite Swamiji Amritaswarupananda Puri, President Mata Amritanandamayi Mutt, who's also the President of Amrita Vidyapeetham. He's an erudite speaker, a philosopher, and author of many books, and his talks are replete with knowledge and love gleaned from living with Amma. Swamiji, can I please seek your divine presence to address us?
Om Premamritanandamayi Nityam Namo Namaha. Om Amriteshwari Namaha. Om Amriteshwari Namaha. Om Amriteshwari. I humbly bow down at Amma's sacred lotus feet. Shri Vijay Nambiar, Shri Agendra Kumar, Shri Mrityunjay, Mohapatra, Dr. Vinod, Menon, and Dr. Maneesha, Sudhir, and other dignitaries. In today's ever-evolving world, debating whether to incorporate sustainability as a strategy is no longer an option. Considering a values-driven approach when incorporating development is vital to our long-term success as a species and as a part of nature. This is not only true for individuals, but also for businesses and organizations today that implementing environmental and social sustainability initiatives and building resilient communities are vital for our overall success. Amma says the creation and the creator are not two. For Amma, ensuring the future of life on earth has been an expression of generosity on behalf of all. Amma has led the implementation of sustainability as an act of compassion, an opportunity to impact the lives of others. In other words, the recreation and re-establishment of the ancient concept of yajna bhava, giving back to society selflessly. In Sanskrit, we call it dakshina. In fact, in every single area of action, including businesses, giving back is a tradition. We reinvest the profit, the dividends. So that's also giving back. Amma often points out that in the olden days, there was no specific need for environmental preservation because protecting nature was part of worshipping God and life itself. Our concept about life, I would say, is wrong. Because when we say my life, there is no such thing as my life. Because life is a totality, it's the totality. It is like space. So when you say my life, it is like, Amma says, a little boy looks through the small window of his room and says, the sky, that piece of sky is mine. So likewise, we too, we don't see the totality, we don't see the oneness. We only see I and mine. We have narrowed down. So more than remembering God, Amma says, the people used to love and serve nature and society in the olden times. They saw the Creator through the creation. They loved, worshipped, and protected nature as God's visible form. Amma has a unique approach to fighting climate change, blending conventional, proactive, and preemptive solutions with the traditional approaches, incorporating cultural and human values. The Mata Amritanandamayi Mutt and its global charities, the Embracing the World, have undertaken the Indeed campaign for nature. Through Indeed and other such initiatives, Embracing the World has been able to organize the planting of more than 1 million trees since 2001, with people from 40 countries around the world participating. Similarly, under Amma's guidance, the research units at Amrita University are focusing on many projects aimed at sustainable development. Amma's inspiration to serve villages sustainably became Amrita University's Living Labs. The project allows students and staff development and deployment of sustainable solutions for current challenges faced by rural communities in India. Through the Living Labs initiative, several clusters of villages across more than 22 states in India have seen sustainable solutions developed, tested, and deployed. And this is a good example of how compassion-driven, sustainable, and resilient communities can involve inclusive and extra community support in making solutions viable. The Living Labs projects now boast of clean water and sanitation solutions, renewable energy implementations, health and hygiene solutions, agriculture and risk management products, waste management implementations, and more. Our work helps villagers already facing the impact of disasters caused by climate change, such as the Uttarakhand floods and Typhoon Haiyan in Philippines, or creeping environmental changes. Amma is also offering new skills for agile adaptation, such as vocational training and a myriad of sustainable practices for affected communities, including rainwater harvesting, sustainable agriculture, scholarships for children's education, and more. Talking about climate change, I'm reminded of how a group of our university students and staff had implemented a solar distiller for lemongrass oil at a remote tribal village, reducing the community's dependence on carbon fuels and making employability viable. Several such climate resilience initiatives are needed when we tackle microclimate solutions to protect farmers, forests, and communities. Amrita's Center for Wireless Networks and Applications have taken Amma's directives and implemented 2 real-time landslide prediction systems in addition to flood evacuation and crowdsourced mobile application for the disaster risk reduction. The School of Biotechnology at Amrita University is currently working on a microbial fuel cell project wherein bacteria in wastewater are being transformed into an energy source while at the same time rendering the water potable. The School of Nanosciences has also developed a low-cost electrical storage integrated solar panel that has the potential to bring power to poor people in remote villages without increasing their carbon footprint. Our researchers are also working on the development of novel materials in a number of applications that include biosensors, new and renewable energy biological entities for low-cost detoxification and treatment of drinking water and industrial effluents, optimization of wastewater treatment, synthesis and applications of biosurfactants, development of lead-free solder materials and other electrode deposition in integrated circuits, nanocomposite solar cells, and artificial photosynthesis. Tackling social injustice, Ammachi Labs, a unit that works on rural women empowerment, had worked with the several villages to create awareness and educational initiatives to include training programs using computer and haptic-based tools for skill training. They and Amrita Create had developed awareness programs and schemes to prevent substance abuse. Yet another project is Jivamritam, a clean drinking water project being scaled across 5,000 villages, has promoted conscious water usage to build water-wise communities. Environmental sustainability will rely on dynamic concepts involving individuals, technology, and practices while keeping conservation and environmental consequences in focus. Currently, 84% of our energy demand comes from fossil fuels. Achieving net zero emissions requires compassion, rethinking, and innovation. When food delivery and local passenger delivery relied on carbon fuels, Amrita University developed a solar rickshaw for that purpose, and the design and manufacture were published as scientific papers in 2016. Such initiatives are needed to match the scales of change, and we need to emphasize a better design for such problems involving the communities that will be affected by climate change. As one of many projects centered around skill training, Amrita University is encouraging women to change their cooking style from open fire cooking to using low smoke and energy efficient stoves. The women trained by Ammachi Labs, who are the end users, are involved in the design of their cook stoves. Lowering the emissions will lead to a decrease in environmental pollution and thereby help reduce climate change. Climate change is a huge systemic challenge. Our organization under Amma's leadership is striving to bring the lost love and reverence towards nature back into people's heart. One of the reasons why efforts to fight climate change do not find the desired results is due to the lack of these two factors, love and reverence. You know, there was a time, maybe 1 or 2 generations ago, our parents and teachers would advise children and students, be loving, be compassionate, serve others, listen to others, don't lie, study well. But now in today's world, love, compassion, selflessness are considered as limitations. And people even think that if you're loving, if you're compassionate, others will exploit you. So it's just, you know, the entire society has changed. Values have changed. What has been positive 2 generations back, or negative qualities in today's world. So Amma is also reinterpreting cultural traditions to address climate change. For example, Vishu is celebrated as the New Year in Kerala, and normally elders in the family give money to the family members, including small children and even to neighbors. And Amma has reinterpreted this. Amma has given a new tactic to the tradition of sharing prosperity. Instead of money, that is Vishu Kainitam. Kainitam is a gift that you would give to the entire family members, to the neighbors and the little children. Kainitam is a gift, money as gift. So instead of that, Amma introduced a new system, Vriksha Kainitam, which means instead of money, Vriksham means a plant. You gift a plant to every single family member, to neighbors, and to the little children. So the tradition of Vishu Kainitam is a gift, usually money, which the elders give to the young members of the family on that day. But Amma has changed by asking the elders to give the seedlings kept in the giving money as gift, instead of giving money as gift. So this changes, this perspective, a fundamental change in perspective is very much necessary, along with the external changes we try to execute. So this changes the fundamental ideas of what we define as precious and roots environmental awareness and values in the psyche of the next generations. I will give you another example. I will conclude after this. In the values-oriented elementary to high school system run by Amma, by Mata Amritanandamayi, many of the 70,000 students ages between 4 to 17 plant a sapling each year and give it a name. So just as giving a name to our pets, or just as giving a name to a baby, you give a name to the sapling. Each morning, the children then water the plant and circumambulate it reverentially. And on the last day of school, before the holidays, many of the children were overheard talking to their saplings, saying such things as, "My dear child, my dear plant, during vacation, I won't be here to water you. But don't be sad. I will come back in 2 months. Don't cry." See, no one had instructed them to do this. It was spontaneous because that atmosphere was created. Amma gives a beautiful example, in samskara. Samskara in English is translated as culture. And it is also known as samskara it is the inner wealth or the values that we hold on to, uphold, the values we uphold. But samskara also means, culture also means sending your urine or your blood sample to the laboratory to do a culture. And what happens in the laboratory? The urine or the blood is kept in a certain atmosphere and a bacterial growth happens within that. In a similar manner, create an atmosphere in your home and a growth happens within you. And that growth is samskara. So having each child plant a sapling was such a simple thing, but what an impact it has had on those children. Now, more than ever, it is our time to work together and find solutions and implement them. Confronted with the massive problems of the world, we may feel our scope for impact is far too minuscule. However, Amma says each of us is like a small candle. While a single candle is insufficient to vanquish the darkness, if all of our candles come together, there is no way we cannot triumph. Thank you so much. Om Amriteswariyai.
Thank you so much, Swamiji, for that passionate and enlightened account of Amma's practical wisdom. We will have a very interesting session now. While I request Swamiji to keep his video on, I request all the other panelists here to kindly join us with your cameras on. We are scheduled to take a group picture to capture the enthusiasm and the auspiciousness of this movement. Can I please request everybody, all our distinguished, eminent personalities here, to kindly for a moment switch on the cameras and join us in taking a group picture. May I please request Vaishak to take the picture once all of us are here.
Okay, Devashish.
Thank you so much, Vishak. We have a very interesting video to watch now. It's a short video on the logo of C20 India 2023, which symbolizes the flame of hope, self-motivation, and selfless service.
You are the light. 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 Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu.
Wonderful. How touching was that? In fact, the first time I saw that, I was blown away by the passion and the energy behind it. Moving forward, may I invite Dr. Maneesha again and Professor Vinod Menon again for the session on expectations, aspirations, and call for udaharans. And before that, I have a short message to share with you all that we have details of CSO being solicited through a form shared by Harichandana on the chat. Kindly use the form to fill in your details, and also kindly share the details of yourself and your organization's name on the chat. We have an open session where we can find it useful to network amongst ourselves. Thank you very much for that. You will find it on the chat from Ms. Harichandana. Moving ahead with the session on expectations, aspirations, and call for udaharans, which will be carried over by Dr. Maneesha, Ramesh, and Professor Vinod Menon. We already have heard from Dr. Maneesha, Ramesh. Let me quickly introduce you to Professor Vinod Menon, who is the International Coordinator for Sustainable and Resilient Communities Working Group under the C20. Professor Menon is the founding member of the NDMA, the National Disaster Management Authority. He has worked in the fields of disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and public policy analysis. In 2005, in fact, he was nominated by the Prime Minister of India as the founding member of the NDMA, which is the status of Union Minister of the state. Let us invite Dr. Maneesha and Professor Vinod Menon to take over the session.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank all the people who are participating from several countries. I see the names of several thought leaders, from several countries who are G20 member countries, and also the invited guest countries. And we also have several guests, very distinguished people who have been working in the field of development action. So we have requested people to please mention your name, organization and also the designation and contact details, including email address and mobile number. We would like to stay connected with all of you. And this is actually an extremely important event because in the G20, out of the 14 working groups, this is one of the working groups where the sustainable and resilient communities, we're really looking at climate, environment, and net zero targets. The issue of sustainability and resilience is actually something which everybody knows. You know, we are actually all working together. So now I feel that the specific expectations from this session in terms of the expectations by the organizers, by the C20 chair, and by the International Advisory Committee, the steering committee, and also the group which is coordinating these events. We hope that we will actually be able to get some valuable inputs from all of you during the breakout groups. So may I request Dr. Maneesha to spell out our expectations from the breakout groups.
Thank you, sir. It's been a journey which we started, and I would like to actually do a heartfelt thank you to Vinod sir on guiding us, on coming up with up to here actually of different areas which we have looked together. So there is a lot of people who worked behind it. So it basically looks into the working group, sustainable and resilient communities, climate, environment, and net zero targets. And we are blessed to have Amma as the chair who can guide us on the right direction to do the compassion-driven approach so that sustainable social change can be brought in. And what we are looking forward is, how can we raise from self-centered goals to selfless societal goals by building solutions that are useful for others and making people and communities happier by reducing their suffering. So naturally, the pathways for empowerment we are looking into on a compassion-driven approach. How can we empower youth? How can we empower citizens, thus empowering the communities itself? So the ecosystem naturally is based on the compassion-driven approaches, where we are looking into developing champions, building global curriculums, as an example like Living Labs program, and building interdisciplinary initiatives where multi-stakeholder engagement can be brought in, and build global partnership and networks with advisors and collaborators for building scalable solutions, and building community scale sustainable and resilient resource centers, which will provide inclusive engagement and empowerment approaches and solutions in collaboration with each one of you. So today, the first level of the structure at which the working group is going forward is we have the C20 chair, under which we have C20 principal coordinator and C20. Then we have the sustainable and resilient community working group, which has the national and international coordinates was there. And in each of these things, we also have steering committee, international executive committee, and sub-thematic groups. In each of the sub-thematic groups, we have divided as 4 themes. First theme is climate resilience and social justice. Second theme is environmental sustainability. Third theme is net zero emission management. And fourth is compassion-driven approach for sustainable and resilient community. We have a very strong national and international coordinators and executive committee who is actually guiding us to take forward in such a manner that civil society's voice can be brought in and policy briefs can be developed based on that. So in the working group vision, naturally, what we are looking forward is to analyze and propose enhancements that are relevant and strategically aligned with both developing, the so-called developed countries, to achieve climate justice. And also it will also seek to measure the impact of existing interventions that address and reduce the risk and increase resilience in the face of future climate environment crisis. The group will also look into best strategies and practices to reduce the tragedy of the commons through multi-stakeholder engagement and propose enhancement and context-specific fine-tuning of policies that could strengthen the initiatives required for building sustainable and resilient communities. This is what initially we have put forward as the vision. The 2 coordinators of the group are one is myself and Vinod Menon sir, and his extensive experience in this area, being the founding member of National Disaster Management Authority, working with as the regional director of teams, Oslo and Brussels, and at the same time, a lot of engagements with both the citizens, the CSOs, and also administration. That experience is bringing us as the strength moving forward. We also have a very strong International Executive Committee. We have Dr. Rajiv Shah, who is the professor and Graduate School of Media and Governance, Kyoto University, who is also a UN Sasakawa Award winner. We have Kerr Harald Drager, President of the International Emergency Management Society, TIPS, Oslo, Norway. Dr. Puji Pujuno, founder, Pujuno Center, Indonesia. Dr. Salimul Haq, founder, director, ICAD, Bangladesh. Dr. Adi Shivan, who is Amrita Foundation of Malaysia. So we look forward with working with them, and we are getting guidance from them and then moving forward. The different working sub-themes are compassion-driven approach for sustainable and resilient communities, environmental sustainability, climate resilience and social justice, net zero emission management. So we have proposed a set of events over time. This time schedule will get, this event list will get improved based on your discussions in the thematic areas which you will propose and each of the group want to bring in. So as of now, with the smaller group, these are some of the things which we have brought in, but we are happy to integrate other things which is needed for bringing the integration and the networking and engagement of CSOs. So Jan 30, as of today, we are having the inaugural ceremony and the networking. February 8 is first our in-person meeting for the role of technology, cooperation and financing for addressing net zero emission management, which is coordinated by the Team 3, which is a net zero emission group. March 21-22 is the event, which is the larger event organized by the G20, where you will have the working group meetings also, which we will have to, based on the discussions with you all, we will propose what we can do there. April 10 and 14 is the thematic area-based networking events. The symposium of CSOs to present udaharans will happen. April 29 to 30, 23, this working group, there is a larger in-person meeting, which will be scheduled at the plan to be conducted at Sikkim. April 2023, we also are planning for online exhibition of best practices, which each of the CSOs submit, and then basically based on that we will have the online exhibition. February to June, on different weeks, we will have public webinars so that we can bring the voices of people. And May 2023, we will have an event for community representations, and June 2023, a short poster or documentary competition which can bring out the needs of the citizens. And July 2023, we are planning we will be also participating in the C20 summit and representing the working group. So in detail, these are the events, but I think I already have told in each of those events what we will do. But I think as we move forward, we go into more depth of each of the groups, and then we will take forward accordingly. There are a lot of other ideas that are coming from different CSOs. We will collate all those ideas. We will work with each one of you in putting together those events. So now when you are moving towards the sub-thematic areas and the breakout sessions, where we will be looking forward from each of the breakout session to bring out the dialogues, which will identify the topics for each sub-theme. Then what is the recommendation for subcommittee who can prepare the policy brief by analyzing the last 5 years policy briefs, proposing events for each sub-theme and who can actually conduct and where we can conduct. Recommendation for subcommittees for collecting udaharans, the best practices, which can be later scaled and used at the G20 countries and the associated countries, and identifying maybe country or regional representatives who can take up the activities of SRC. And some of the milestone which has come up from the Secretariat of C20 are the February 2023, we have to give the draft concept note, and the last week of February call for udaharans, and March 10th, the zero policy draft we have to give. I think this is the first set of things which we are aware of. As time passes, I think more things will get cleared, and we will be contacting you and bring back. And I would request Vinod sir to bring in all the points which I have missed and all the extra things, sir. Thank you.
No, thank you. It is a very comprehensive summary of the kind of issues which we are actually dealing with. And when I look at the profile of the very distinguished delegates attending this event, this is the network meeting, and of the C20 member countries, we find people from so many G20 member countries and invited guest countries. And I'm very, very happy that we have, so many people who are participating in this with so much of active engagement, not only in civil society initiatives, but also as thought leaders in various, disciplines. They have been actually working. So I think, it is very much necessary that we have an opportunity of listening to all of you in the sub-themes. And now we have 4 sub-themes, and we have the sub-theme coordinators. The first sub-theme is on climate resilience and social justice, which is being anchored and led by Climate Action Network South Asia, which is a network with more than 300 organizations in 8 South Asian countries. A very strong active partner in the Climate Action Network International, working with climate action networks across different continents. And we have Amrita University, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham supporting Climate Action Network South Asia in that. So we have the second sub-theme is on environmental sustainability. So this sub-theme is actually led by Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham. And we have actually the third sub-theme is on net zero emission management, which is led by Vasudha Foundation, which has been established in 2010, but they have been very active in the field of energy issues, and also a very strong think tank with a lot of experience globally, interacting with the United Nations and also with the climate action networks, and engaging with national governments. As a policy think tank, they have been providing several inputs. So that's the third sub-theme on net zero emission management led by Vasudha Foundation. And the fourth sub-theme is on compassionate approaches for sustainable and resilient communities. And that sub-theme is also led by Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham. And so we request now, Dr. Maneesha, if that is okay, we will have brief presentations by the teams from CANSA on climate resilience and social justice first, and then we go by the sub-themes.
I think Vasisht will call, sir.
Yeah, okay. Vasisht, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maneesha and Professor Menon. The first theme is about climate resilience and social justice. Can I please invite Shri Sanjay Vasisht, sir, Director CANSA, and Dr. Maneesha V. Ramesh to present the theme to us.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for, I have a couple of slides to share. First of all, let me, thank on behalf of Climate Action Network South Asia, all our member organizations, the opportunity to input into climate resilience and social justice aspect, which is very closer to us. This presentation is on behalf of Climate Action Network South Asia and Amrita University together. Basically, idea is to set the context so that when the breakout group takes place, we already cover a lot more in terms of content and issues to be identified. Climate change is no new threat to us. We have been facing impacts every year. Monsoon becomes cyclone focused or flood focused, summer becomes drought prone, winter becomes cold waves, and due to which the growing climate vulnerability has been mapped already by German Watch also, that all countries in the world are impacted, they are vulnerable, and they are facing climate impacts one after another. And all these climate impacts every year are more extreme and frequent in nature. Now, vulnerability is normally decided not by how much impacts you face, but how much resources you have to fight those impacts. And certainly, we know that developing countries have less resources to fight these impacts, and we are more vulnerable and exposed to the climate impacts. These are the manifestations of climate change, changing rain and snow patterns, changes in animal migration and life cycles, higher temperature or more heat wave. Basically, too much or too less is a problem. More droughts or wildfires due to higher temperature, or cold waves, and then suddenly warm winters also is a new kind of climate manifestations that we are observing every year. And because of temperature rising, we are already around more than 1.2 degree temperature has been breached average wise, and that means the temperature varies from place to place. Somewhere it may be 3 degree temperature high, or somewhere it may be -1 degree compared to the normal levels. That's because we are still highly dependent on fossil fuels, and fossil fuels are pumping greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere, which is thickening the atmosphere cover of greenhouse gases, and thus acting as a warm blanket around the earth. So higher dependence on fossil fuel, and then also untested and many times first-time adaptation measures has led to situations where we faces permanent losses due to heat wave, due to increasing temperature, due to salinization, due to desertification and drought. Now, higher exposure to the climate impacts, and on the other side, permanent losses to the life-supporting resources like land or human resources are some aspects that leads to disproportionate impact on poor and emerging economies. Poor are more exposed. They are the one who stand, if they can withstand one cyclone, they may not be able to withstand the third cyclone, which may come within 7 to 8 months of the period. By the time they rebuild their lives, another climate impacts comes, not necessarily in the cyclone form, also could be water scarcity. It also could be slow onset impacts like salinization. Now, disproportionate impact on poor would mean is being caused because of anthropogenic activities like urbanization, deforestation, transport, excess use of fossil fuels, etc. Developed countries, as I said earlier, also are mainly responsible, but as prosperity is spreading, so are responsibilities on economically strong countries like G20. The rich across the world have a very high carbon footprint. On top of it, they have a lot more resources at their disposal that they can fight any kind of vulnerability. But poor on the front line of impact are the most vulnerable, and they are the ones who are most exposed to the climate impacts also. What does it mean? What impacts are there on resilience and social justice? Reduced yield of farmers to 20% or more due to climate variability. This is one kind of impact that causes compromisation of resilience and also injustice. Shrinking arable land due to salinization. Permanent losses to habitat and income generating resources. Health impacts due to exposure to heat and cold waves. And then that means your ability to earn, your ability to withstand is compromised. Increased medical with new diseases. What does that mean? That means you will be able to, these families cannot spend more on educating their future generation, but it's more about survival for them on day-to-day basis. Climate-induced forced displacement. These are people who don't want to migrate, but this is a push factor which pushes them out of their habitat, and they are displaced, and they move to cities where exploitation is higher, where human exploitation is higher, and they are exposed to this kind of exploitation, which leads to injustice to their lives. And inequity is already there in the finances. We know the money who controls. Top 10% receives almost 52% of resources or income. Middle 40% receive 40%. It's the poorest 50% who receives only 8% who need to be prioritized when we speak about building resilience, long-term resilience, and also ensuring social justice for them. We know where the capability lies. These are the countries, all may not be in G20, but most of them are in G20s. Capabilities lies with them to actually provide resources, to provide technology, to ensure adaptation, and to ensure social justice, because God has made everyone equal. And thus, we do hope that these sub-themes looks into the gap that can be bridged by G20, the gap of global climate finance needs, which are very higher, actual global climate finance, which is being provided, and actual money that reaches to the vulnerable communities, which is very less, and a lot more gets filtered in administering these kind of money. So I'll stop here and look forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sanjay and Dr. Maneesha. Professor Menon, do I have your permission to move on to the second theme?
Dr. Maneesha would also like to add on, any other inputs into expectations from the subgroups in terms of early warning systems and also in terms of community engagement and civil, larger civil society participation in development processes. Dr. Maneesha, over to you.
Thank you, sir. So one of the key issues or challenges which we see in the climate resilience and social justice is policies. They're really good policies, but making sure that policy reach the community and empowering the community to utilize that policy so that resilience can be built. That is something which I feel like in the thematic area, we may have to have a discussion, detailed discussion. At the same time, one of the major thing is because the multi-hazards are increasing, the number of people dying is also increasing. So how can we save life? In this regard, early warning systems becomes a major requirement. So how do we equip these areas which are highly prone to different hazards, and how we will bring in early warning systems, which is usable by the community? They should be able to work on it. They should be able to operate and also, take and understand what are the messages which is coming from the early warning without panicking. So how do you bring in interdisciplinary domains to build a system which is useful for multi-stakeholders to implement the community scale resilience? The third thing which I really feel is majorly the education aspect of the climate. Today, I don't think all the universities or schools have a course which can take in-depth understanding, provide in-depth understanding about the climate change and variations, and how the youth can be empowered to make the change and then bring in. So there is a need for more programs and platforms which will bring out the disaster resilience and at the same time the community empowerment, and how through that we make sure the social justice is provided, and how we equally make sure all the resources are available to the people. And very, very heartening things we have seen when the COVID set in, the migration effects and how the migrants had to move away from where they are working and they didn't have any job for a period. And this is very important. And to understand the climate thing, how you bring in diversification of income generation and livelihoods, so that it also brings in empowerment in the women, so that community can become resilient. So there are a lot more points are there. Maybe in the thematic discussion we can bring in further more things to discuss this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Vasisht.
Professor Menon, we move to the sub-theme, the second sub-theme of environmental sustainability, whose the coordinating organizers are Amrita Vidyapeetham and Kansa, and Dr. Sudesh Wadhavan from Amrita Vidyapeetham and Mr. Nakul Sharma from Kansa will be taking over. Sure.
Good evening to all of you. The sub-theme which is now I'm going to briefly touch upon is environmental sustainability. Now this is a very vast topic, and allow me to share my screen. I'll just present 2-3 slides. Yeah. Yes. So I'll be presenting a brief highlight of this particular theme, and Mr. Nakul Sharma from Kansa, he will be also elaborating on that. And from Amrita University team, we have Dr. Vishwanathan PK, Dr. Sundarajan, and Mr. Ranjit Mohan supporting over this particular session today. So as we all know that environmental sustainability has got 3 major pillars. The definition is a responsible interaction with the environment to avoid depletion or degradation of natural resources and allow for long-term environmental quality. And 3 major pillars which support the sustainability are social sustainability, economic sustainability, and environmental sustainability. These various attributes of these are very well known to all of us. Now, the essential aspect is how well do we adopt to this, and how do we bridge the gap between the developed nations who are better capable of meeting such goals rather than the ones who are developing. And as earlier pointed out by our colleagues in the first session, so this bridging of the gap of the technological know-hows and those who are striving to meet their ends meet. So these are the aspects we need to be discussing on. And some of the choices that we make are meant for preserving our future generation to enjoy the similar sports systems that we enjoy today. So this is the basic essence which was actually highlighted by Brundtland report in 1987. And the importance of environmental sustainability is that human well-being is intrinsically linked to environment's health. Therefore, if we take care of the health of the environment will definitely take care of our status, our livability, and will protect us. The environment has got its own inherent capacity to regenerate itself, and it will protect us and will help in providing unpolluted air to breathe, clean water to drink, and live in places free of toxic substances. Now, some of the key aspects which I think we need to focus on, and my colleagues will also support on some of these issues during our breakaway sessions. That is pollution management, combating global warming, and waste management, including air and water pollution aspects. Stress management, stress on all kinds of various attributes, that is combating biotic and abiotic stresses, climate change issues, stress on the diverse ecosystems, and then of course very important aspect is sustainable agriculture. These are the aspects which provide the food security to all of us. And then biodegradation and bioremediation aspects of improving the environment and its sustainability. Nature-based solutions are very important, and general experience is that such solutions, they need to cover larger areas, and to cover large areas and large landscapes. I don't know how many CSOs are actually empowered, are actually having the resources to meet it. But the governmental resources and public-private partnerships can certainly encourage meeting some of these nature-based solutions for long-term and sustainable ecosystem developments. Water, energy, food ecosystems. This is a nexus which has got its own interlinkages and cycles, and we need to really develop synergies that maintain the integrity and sustainability of the ecosystems. And then an important aspect again is the technology and the best practices. Now, environment is essentially comprising two major considerations, that is physical conditioning, physical abiotic setup, and socio-economic setup. Now, this is a huge variety of attributes spread all over the globe. Now, how best to acknowledge this and to bridge this? Natural resources and hazard status has to be defined for each territory actually. And this is a major task. And this is, I think, this particular aspect would need greater consideration. And I think we should be in a position to develop some policy pack on particular aspect. Other aspects that we need to consider are towards holistic regional development, that is sustainable practices, towards plastic-free environment, and of course the recent examples of reckless tourism or unregulated development of a particular hilly area is actually causing a lot of stress to the people who are living there, and also creating the hazards which are normally under control. But then these are the aspects which are actually having a long-term impact on particular disaster risk reduction. And as Maneesha ma'am has already pointed out, developing early warning systems, and also taking care of the capacity of a particular area, hilly area, to sustain certain economic growth. These are the regulatory aspects wherein a policy pack needs to be developed. Community participation in water resource management is again a very, very important issue and should also form a main core area of our discussions. Then community participation in afforestation and watershed management programs, and above all, accountability in sustainability. Now, this feature I think needs to be more and more, both from the developed world as well as from the developing countries. So thank you very much with this brief glimpse of our theme. So we need to identify the members from G20 nations for the theme, plan for the future meetings, development of status or a concept paper, and natural resources and hazards on land use, land cover aspects, particularly related to the climate change, and development of the various policy management issues. So thank you very much for giving me time, and we look forward to more of detailed discussions on this.
Dr. Nakul, if you have any points to bring in.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Maneesha, ma'am. And it's an honor and glad to be a part of this meeting with Civil 20. I just wanted to highlight a couple of points. Glad to be a part of this meeting, and great to have this opportunity to present in such the presence of such august audience. We at CAN South Asia has been working in various aspects of managing how climate change is manifesting with various issues per se, development and various sectors. And I think the sub theme on environment collects it all. The ideas and the topics which have been identified by Dr. Sudesh Wadhwan says it all. However, I just want to add a couple of points based on how the thematic topics can be break down into various topics, and then ideas could be generated around that. It's a well-known fact. Sir, in your presentation and your slide, you very well mentioned that pollution management is one of the major areas. I think it does not need any examples. I am based out of New Delhi. Most of our South Asian cities and the cities in global South are being tagged as the most polluted, air polluted cities across the world. So the fact of working on this issue cannot be underlined. Stress on ecosystems. We have been witnessing the case of Joshimath in our national headlines in the last couple of weeks. I think the load-bearing capacity of our city, especially of Himalayan ecosystem, and the watershed areas, the water belts, which are the lifelines of billions of peoples living in not only in India but in the lower riparian countries across South Asia. And this is also a case for regional thinking cannot be underlined. So stress on ecosystems and the linking of those things on those lines is also vital. Nature-based solutions. I just want to also highlight the fact that there has been a lot of discussions on nature-based solutions around climate negotiations. We also need to understand and the both positive and negative effects of nature-based solutions. So how nature-based solutions in terms of bringing out financial support to communities can be utilized in a manner where environmental integrity and the integrity of the whole process remains sacrosanct and remains untouched is another area. Finally, water, food, and energy nexus is definitely an area for us which can be broken down into various sectors per se. But just sharing these thoughts for the moment, and we will dwell deeper into the subthematic breakout sessions on that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wadhwan and Mr. Nakul Sharma. We go next to the third sub-theme, which is on net zero emissions management, which is organized in coordination between Vasudha Foundation and Amrita Vidyapeetham. Dr. Srinivas Krishnaswamy is here with us, who's the CEO of Vasudha Foundation. Can I please request sir to present the sub-theme? He's along with Dr. Shasangan Ramanathan from Amrita Vidyapeetham.
Thank you very much, and a very good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to all of you. At the outset, I would like to thank Amrita Vidyapeetham and particularly Dr. Maneesha and Dr. Menon for giving Vasudha Foundation the opportunity to lead this very important working group or sub-working group on emissions management, net zero emissions management. Now, let me just present my screen.
And also, sir, by the time you present, a few words on Vasudha for all of us.
Sure. Vasudha Foundation is a not-for-profit think tank, NGO, civil society group set up in 2010, working on the clean energy, climate policy space. We've been working with a wide range of institutions, both government as well as non-governmental, state and central, on various issues related to climate and clean energy. Some of our flagship programs include setting up a huge dashboard in partnership with Niti Aayog on the energy, climate, and economy space. The whole idea of this is actually to give thought to the net zero modeling in India and developing pathways. We also work with a number of states, Uttar Pradesh, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, to name a few, to work in developing net zero visioning for these states. So that's a long and short. For more details on Vasudha Foundation, our website has all our website. Our website does have a lot of information. The website is vasudha-foundation.org. You could also visit some of our other dashboards that we've created, which includes vasudapower.net. vasudapower.net. Now, coming to the presentation on the net zero emissions management working group, how do we propose to do it, and why is it important to work on this issue? If you actually look at this map, which actually shows the countries that have submitted their net zero targets, we have close to about 90 countries, a shy short of 90 countries who have submitted their net zero targets. And if you actually look at the map, most of them are developing countries. And a lot of them would require support or technology or finance in order to meet with the very ambitious targets, including that of India. Further, if you actually look at close to about 109 countries, 100 shy of over 100 countries have not submitted their net zero targets. It is not that there's not, we cannot assume that they do not have the intention. It could also be because they do not have the capacities to do it. And the G20 is one of the best platforms which can actually support these countries in coming up with a net zero visioning for them, and also helping them to set targets in terms of, and also providing pathways in terms of technology and other support. Now, a net zero roadmap is fairly complicated. It's not very easy. So you look at the baseline assessment, you look at the future demand assessment. So what is today's scenario, and what will be tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, and the 2040 and the 2030 and the 2040 and the 2050, maybe a 2060 scenario, bringing all the stakeholders, whether it's ministries, departments, states, numerous agencies in the hierarchy of decision-making and policy-making together, get them on board, setting milestones, ensuring that nobody is left behind in the transition journey. Very often when you shift from A to B, there are people who are impacted by it. How do you ensure that those impacted by it are not affected by the transition, but are also taken forward along with the transition? And finally, how do you achieve the net zero goals? So you're not just looking at the energy sector, but you're also looking at abatement of non-energy sectors, which includes agriculture, livestock, industrial processes, so on and so forth. And you also need to look at, it's not always that you can reduce your emissions by straight action, but you also need to look at carbon sequestration, increasing your carbon sinks, You need to look at financial architecture for financing transition. There are some states or some countries that depend largely on fossil fuel for their, which fuels their economy. So how do you bring them on board and they are not lost in the transition and so on? And more importantly, a transition to net zero should be just and equitable, both socially and environmentally. So this is how, this is just to give you an indication of what the schematic diagram of a net zero would be. What are the issues? So basically, then this would mean that you need to look at taking an example of India, and that's so with for a lot of countries, actions at subnational levels. You need to have collaborations and partnerships, looking at technology sharing, R&D, pilots, addressing the issue of IPR, intellectual property rights, and so on. You need to have push newer technologies. You do have few in the pipeline, but you may need a lot more in the coming years to make the transition happen much more robust and faster. Climate finance is extremely important. A lot of countries do not have the money to do it. Where is the money going to come? And so on. And this also requires dialogues and informed policy making across multiple levels, including CSOs, NGOs, think tanks, government, academia, etc., etc., etc. And then more importantly, it's a data-driven research. We have a few examples of how we as Vasudha Foundation have actually helped put together the data. For paucity of time, I will not get into these sites, but in the working groups, I would request my colleagues to present this. And then, of course, our Prime Minister has come up with this very, very important concept of life, which is extremely important. And how do you actually impact lifestyles or change lifestyles for environment? Now, what are the broad areas to be deliberated? So based on what I have presented so far, some of the key sectors and subsectors that we need to address, enable India and other developing countries to achieve net zeros, industrial decarbonization, you could look at transport decarbonization, residential and other sector decarbonization, importantly, electricity generation decarbonization. How do you shift from fossil fuel to non-fossil fuel, agriculture and other related sectors, technology need assessments to decarbonize various sectors. Some technologies are easily available. Some technologies are available, but very, very expensive. So how do you make it more accessible to all? Technology cooperation, which will address the issue of need assessment as well as making access cheaper technologies. Best practice for net zero emission management that ensures that no one is left behind. I already talked about that. Looking at enforcement and compliance, and then scaling of finance for net zero emissions. These are some of the issues we could add to it. These are just indicative. There would be a lot more. And as the working group convenes and we will have more and more members joining, I'm sure we can add to this list, prioritize them, and come up with a very robust set of recommendations that can be taken for the G20.
I'm sorry. Sir, I'm really sorry. Let's can we please go it faster so that we cover up all the rest?
So in the next steps, organize a series of meetings. And then, this is just the next steps. We're going to have the first meeting that's proposed on the 8th of February that Dr. Maneesha already spoke about. And then, of course, all the others Dr. Maneesha already alluded to. And so these are something that I just wanted to set the context for net zero in India, but I will not touch on that because of paucity of time. But this is something that can be taken up in the working group. But one thing that I would like to point out is data is extremely important. If you actually look at this slide, which shows India's emissions, energy sector is a major contributor to the emissions. So how do you address that? What are the various areas? And technology and technology cooperation will play a very major role. And this is an indicative time chart for net zero emissions. If you actually look at it, we have actually looked at 2070 for India. We looked at 2020, 2030, 2040, 2050, and 2060. Now, this is something similar could be, but for all of that, again, you need a lot of other things to fall in place. So how do you do that? So with that, I will stop now. Thank you very much, and more in the working group.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for understanding and that wonderful presentation. Can I please request Shashankan Ramanathan, sir, from Amrita Vidyapeetham to add his inputs to the same theme?
Yeah, I think Srinivas covered everything. I think one important thing that we may have to look at, besides the short-term goal, is the long-term sustainability of all of these policies, which is bringing all of these into the educational stream of the younger generation. So it becomes a way of life and not that we're trying to force and implement things. So that's something that we may want to add on as we take this to the working group.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Srinivas sir and Shashankan sir, for the wonderful input. Let's move on to the sub-theme number 4, which is the last sub-theme in this working group, which is about compassion-driven approach for sustainable and resilient communities, primarily organized by Amrita Vidyapeetham. May I please request Professor Vinod Menon and Dr. Shri from Amrita Vidyapeetham to lead us through the sub-theme. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The compassionate approaches for sustainable and resilient communities is a sub-theme number 4. And we have this particular sub-theme is actually echoing the tagline of the civil society platform C20, which is "You are the light." And compassion is actually the value, the human value, which we have seen during the COVID-19 when we all witnessed the mega disaster of our lifetime. You know, we saw the COVID-19, which is affecting more than 228 countries around the world. And we saw that this has literally paralyzed households, you know, where they could not actually look after the patients because of the hospitalization challenges and also because of the expenses involved and so on. So we saw the enormous outpouring of compassion from all over the world to the people who are affected. We saw the people who were being shifted to hospitals. We saw corporates helping. We saw civil society organizations helping. We saw migrant workers being supported. So I think compassion is actually, as Swamiji very rightly mentioned, the need for looking at love and reverence and appreciation for each other is very important. And so that is why we feel that civil society have been doing this selfless dedication, not only during epidemics like the COVID pandemic, but then we have also seen that during disasters, extreme events, and also conflicts. So compassion is actually something which is the lifeblood of volunteerism. And so we would like to really see that happen in terms of making sure that protection of vulnerable sections, protecting the rights and entitlements of vulnerable sections through an inclusive participatory process where civil society engages with civil administrators, with decision makers, with elected representatives. And so this is an opportunity which we feel, with the blessings of Amma and also the International Advisory Committee and the chair, the group of people who are actually guiding the processes in all the 14 working groups, we feel that we should actually be taking forward. So what is compassion and what is sustainability and resilience, and what are the linkages between these? There's a very powerful poem by Maria del Andrade, which is called My Soul Has a Hat. And it says, we all have two lives. The second one begins when we realize we only have one. So volunteerism and compassion has to be followed by all of us as a part of our own seva. And that is something which, we know that service and social service is extremely important. And that's one of our most important human values. And there's a poem called Success written by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he says, to laugh often and much, to win the appreciation of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a little better, whether by a healthy child, a garden path, or a redeemed social condition, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. So I think, that is something which is actually being shown by Amma and by the Mother Amritanandamayi Foundation, the Trust, and Amrita University, and all the partners who are participating in this, including the Climate Action Network South Asia and Vasudha Foundation. And we feel that this is an opportunity for creating an enduring, long engagement by the civil society to advise and guide the processes for better risk governance, protect the vulnerable sections, work with communities and grassroots level, and look at sustainability and resilience from the point of view of understanding the work of all the people who are thought leaders attending this session today. And we find that there are many people who are actually attending this from many countries after having contributed not only in civil society, but also through their own intensive research, active engagement with administrators, with urban planners, with decision makers. And we feel that this is an opportunity when all of us can work together. So Dr. Sriram, if you could kindly add on to any other issues and concerns which we would need to address.
Thank you so much, Professor Menon. I'll be very brief. First of all, I think compassion underlies this entire effort, to my mind. And so it's a very foundation and the bedrock. Now, if we see the general trend with policy development processes, one of the things that often become a stumbling block is the lack of a clear or the consensus for operational definitions. And so I feel that there could be value in having some discussions on the operational definitions for these two keywords, compassion and resilience, and also looking at the existing paradigms of compassion that have been attempted to be adopted by civil societies. That's one. Also, I feel that civil societies, there are many with similar focuses, but operating in silos. So there is a great opportunity for uniting the voices. This can strengthen the collective voice, reduce redundancies, and we can share the diversities of challenges encountered by them from their rich experience. And in this context, having a Creative Commons platform or some such arrangement, I think, could be discussed. And I think in the past, we've, of course, been driven by value-based economic, value-based assessment frameworks, which generally are driven by economics. But then when we look at values, which is where the idea of compassion comes in, the universal human values, I think that needs to be very tightly integrated into the sustainability assessment frameworks. I think somewhere in this, I'm sure we will do this in a natural way, but the slogan that we have, "You are the light," I think there's going to be diversity in terms of the meaning construction of this slogan. And I think we need to understand what that means and then come to unity from the diversity. Now, there's one other thing that I think is very important, which is pluralism. We are always dealing with this. India is a pluralistic society. Across the world, we have pluralism, whether it's in terms of religion or philosophy or anything, politics and so on. So I think we need to look at where there could be intersectionality of the social dividers, the sustainability goals, the compassion and the resilience definitions. When we look at the intersectionality of these, I think we would have a stronger basis from which the policy would evolve. So this is where, of course, we'd look at compassion built into our policy design, compassion and resilience built into the policy and program designs and implementation and so on. And I think ultimately, if we remember this one sort of motivating quote from Martin Luther King Jr., I'll just end with that, where he said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." So I think you can just carry that forward, where we say inequality anywhere is a threat to equality everywhere, and unsustainability anywhere is a threat to sustainability everywhere. So I'll end with those words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Menon and Professor Sriram, for summing up the last sub-theme for us. Now let's move on to the open house. This is to ensure inclusive participation of CSOs from G20, civil society practitioners, and professionals from G20 member nations and invited guest countries. I invite everybody to post their questions on the chat or raise their hands. We'll take it on the first come, first serve basis. And I request the panelists and esteemed dignitaries here to keep the interventions short, say maximum of 2 minutes, because we are already running late in time. And we'll take it on a first come, first serve basis. For the rest of the discussions on the sub-themes and the larger agenda of this working group, please do follow us on the breakout rooms which are going to follow this particular open house session, and also on the email ID that I'm going to share on the chat shortly with the team. With that, can I please invite the questions from the various CSOs, civil society practitioners, and professionals. You can raise your hand, the team will provide you a permission to unmute yourself, or you can put your question on the chat. If you want somebody specific to answer, also you can mention that.
Yeah, in the reactions, on the Zoom, you can find the raising the hand icon under reaction. So you can click on that. If you want to speak, you can raise your hand, and then you'll be invited to speak. Thank you.
I can see Vinita Apte has raised the hand.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. This is not a question, but I really appreciate the efforts which are taken.
If you can introduce your organization and then.
Yeah, sorry. I'm Dr. Vinita Apte, founder and director of TARE Policy Center. TARE means Earth in French, and we stand for Technology, Education, Research, and Rehabilitation for the Environment. We have developed more than 6 forests on the high mountain ranges. We are in environment education, watershed management, and especially to develop the communities. Adopted 6 villages in Maharashtra. And we have developing the community over there through the commercial plants, distribution, giving them training, capacity building, and so on. So we are in energy sector also for solar and other equipments. It is not a manufacturing thing, but it's a training and capacity building for the solar equipments. Those who are dropouts from the 10th and 12th board exams. So this is my introduction. There I can, my organization is a UN civil society partner. We are IUCN partner, and we also have a ECOSOC observer status, UNFCCC accreditation, UNESCO accreditation, and so on. So I wanted to, I don't have any question because this was a very comprehensive thing.
Dr. Vinita.
I would really appreciate your efforts, and I will be there for any of work you can ask me. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. So we have Mr. Sarish Nas from Pakistan has mentioned on the chat that he would like to speak. Sarish Nas. Sanjay Hazarika is there from Assam, from Guwahati. Dr. Sanjay Hazarika, are you there? Okay, is there anybody else who's raised the hand?
Tobias now.
Tobias from Kenya.
Can you unmute?
Sanjay.
Sorry.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I'm in a transit kind of situation. Hi, Dr.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you and General also. No, I had a very simple point. I've been listening very carefully to this very interesting set of conversations and presentations. And I think one of the most critical points that we sometimes neglect is behavioral change, because that is at the heart. If you want to make a difference to the lives of people so that they understand issues about climate change and resilience, then behavioral change has to come in. Because throughout the countries of the South, I'm not singling any country out, but many countries of the South essentially have a problem with waste disposal. And I think we all see the challenge of garbage disposal, the fact that garbage seeps into groundwater and then contaminates it, similarly seeps into the rivers. You see plastic everywhere, blown around by the winds. And I think this is one of the most critical things, how to mobilize communities to better understand the critical issues, because a phrase like climate change, for many people, they need to understand what that means at the very basic level. And behavioral change, in my view, is most important to enable this process to become vigorous, all the things that have been said, and sustainable. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Professor Menon, we can order it, Mr. Dr. Pradeep, Raktima, and Surya Prakash. If that is fine, they can go one after the other, so that quickens the process.
Okay.
Dr.
We also have Mr. Tobias from Kenya who had raised his hand.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm really grateful for this opportunity that this event has come at a time when just after COP27, when countries convened in Egypt to discuss matters on climate change. My question was going directly on the key thematic area on environmental sustainability. We've been having a challenge. For Team Environment Kenya, we've been able to collaborate with the government of Kenya to plant trees, and besides that, do capacity building with the communities in different areas in the country, and also reach out to other East African countries. What is the place of the young people in this cause? Many of the organizations have been working closely with different agencies to ensure we mitigate climate change and the ravaging changes in the world. And the place of the young people have been left behind, and that's why I don't know how can we be able to leverage on the same to ensure whatever we're looking forward to achieve is really achieved. Number two, also on the same, maybe if you permit, in different areas of the world, many of the different agencies and organizations have missed a point in identifying the tree species, then also capacity building on different areas of concern to change, and also help the government systems to understand what they're supposed to do. What do we have to do to ensure the government systems embrace the key thematic areas we have aligned so that they domesticate in the different areas? As I finish, I would like to appreciate Swami and the team who visited us, and they are able to invite us to attend this very important meeting, and we look forward to be co-opted in the working group so that we can help using our expertise to leverage in the same in Africa and other areas that you look forward to achieve your target areas in Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tobias. If I can just sort of quickly respond. One of the things which Amrita University has been also trying to do is to create some training of trainers modules on climate change, along with the Climate Action Network South Asia and also Vasudha Foundation and other partners. And so we can also look at opportunities for creating that kind of community resilience by civil society organizations across continents by working on this training of trainers modules. So we will continue to be engaged in that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Dr. Pradeep here. Can I speak now?
Dr. Menon, can I just add to whatever you spoke? Dr. Menon, on this side. See, we are having programs on agroforestry and watershed management. In fact, we would really welcome Dr. Tobias on giving us very good practices that he's finding very successful while implementing the plantations and the survival of those plants in the long run. So this will be a good interaction with Dr. Tobias. We'll look forward to interact with him and also record all those good examples, the udaharans that his country and his network is actually establishing. That will be a great opportunity to interact and learn. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Pradeep?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dr. Pradeep Sharma. I'm the founder of an organization called Center for Rural Development. So we have a very significant project called Riksha Bank. We are based in Assam, in Guwahati. So under that initiative, we are promoting the cycle rickshaws from the design innovation to the financial innovation to the social innovation, and which is one of the best practices that we are working for last 20 years across the countries. We have started in Assam, then we have expanded to other states, like even other cities like Lucknow, Benares, Allahabad and all. So my idea is that eco-mobility for the sustainable livelihood is one of the subjects which could be bringing more onto this net zero target. So that could be a different thing, and then we'll be very happy to be involved on this subject, because promoting eco-mobility is a big subject. And nowadays, once this whole rail, the metros, everything is coming up in the various cities, then always there is a need for these feeder services.
Dr. Pradeep Sharma, if you could kindly send some of the write-ups along with the photographs, to the email address which is given in the chat, we would really appreciate that. We are looking for good practices, and there is a call for good practices, so we can get in touch with you once you send an email with some links. Okay.
Okay, we have been awarded around 22 national and international awards, and a case study is also published in MIT journal called Innovations. There are a lot of case studies is already being published. So I will share those things.
Yes.
So can I have, I'll try to get the email ID again.
Yeah, it is there in the chat. It is src.c20, C20 India @gmail.com.
Okay, I will take a note again further. Or if someone write it down, then I can take a note.
Yeah, it is there in the chat.
Sir, it is written on the chat. If you just scroll the chat, you will be able to see.
Okay, fine. src.c20. Yes, I got it.
Yes.
Can we have the next CS?
Or in order of after Surya Prakash, Masiya, Ashans, anybody of the three?
Yeah, Messiah.
Okay, let's move.
Should I share? I'm Raktima.
Okay.
Please,
Good evening and namaskar to all of you. I'm Dr. Raktima Mohapatra. I'm representing IBRA, the Indian Institute of Biosocial Research and Development. We are based at Kolkata, and we are one of the Center of Excellence under the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, working with the indigenous communities in different parts of the community of the country. While I was listening to all of you, very important presentations, I was just thinking, like, when we are talking about climate resilience, it requires to have social and cultural resilience as well. And the indigenous communities, the tribal communities, their traditional knowledge and practices that they have, it can help in designing the strategies for not only climate change adaptation or mitigation, but also improving the resilience. So in the C20 forum, do you have some plan for having a focus on the traditional knowledge and practices, documenting the traditional knowledge and practices that we have in our country, and that can contribute a lot? And if so, we will be very happy to contribute in terms of organizing any panels, workshops, conventions, awareness programs. We are having a network with more than 14 states, members from more than 14 states.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mohapatra. Actually, we will be able to give you the list of all these 14 working groups. It is there in the civil20.net/working-groups- if you can actually see that, you will be able to see all the 14 working groups. There is one working group which is looking at traditional art forms and also indigenous communities and various other sets of issues, indigenous knowledge systems. So I think it will be good to look at all the working groups, and you can also contribute in terms of sustainable and resilient communities. You could also send your good practice case studies. We will be very happy to look at all these case studies and then select, shortlist some of the good practices for further dissemination.
Professor Menon, we have Dr. Tariq Rashid. Can we please invite him over for the question, please?
Dr. Tariq. There's a message from Messiah saying that Messiah is not able to unmute. Can you please unmute?
We have Julia Vanyoke also. Maybe
Yes.
after Dr. Tariq. Dr. Tariq, are you able to?
Well, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to have this short intervention. First of all, congratulations for Amrita to basically organizing C20, and of course under the leadership of Dr. Maneesha, always impressive. And I'm part of Amrita family, but today I'm wearing a different hat. I'm representing Civilization Right Institute based on the USA. We are a non-profit organization focused on two things. I think two of them are very related to the climate change working group track. One of them related to digital transformation maturity model that we developed for the UNDP and has been pilot tested in Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Philippines and Nepal, and UNDP is adapting this digital transformation model, and we are trying to kind of like promote it, and that could be something that we can discuss on the climate resilience part. The other one is a particular focus for funding mechanism for social justice and climate change, especially in heritage communities. And we've been promoting a new concept related to what we call it civilization rights. And that will be, I think, very a keen, very kind of like aligning very well with the climate change and social justice working group. So as part of the Civilization Rights Institute, we are very interested and keen to, to pitch some ideas and also, hopefully discuss that. So that's just a short intervention here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tariq. Dr. Julia Vanyoke is also with us. Dr. Julia, are you able to unmute?
I'm here. Good morning. It's early here. I'm so happy that I just caught the last of this. I'm calling in from Lenape, Hoking, or also known as New York City, here representing Guild Global United Indigenous Land Defenders, which is mostly youth. And mostly indigenous youth. And I've known Amma since I was 5, so this feels special for some of my worlds to be connecting in this way. And yeah, just also want to like touch on like the one woman who spoke about indigenous people, as well as the other person from Kenya who was speaking about youth, and just speak a little bit from the perspective of like a young person who's organizing with a lot of the youth who are leading the climate fight right now. And we're having a lot of strategizing meetings, and we're laying out what we need and what type of support we need. And we're also using the like youthfulness of our bodies to put them on the line and like stop our homelands from being destroyed from extractive industries. And so we're touching on all of the bases, we're writing policy, we're reading, we're doing all of the things, we're connecting, but there's still a lot of gaps. And I would really like us to get involved with what is being created, and also just like putting a call out to like the older generations and our elders who are on this call. Like, even though we're young, we've been like working really hard for many years now to create the world that we're envisioning, and we're just asking for some support, some like places to lean on. We have like a lot of visions, and just curious like how we can get the resources and how we can be put in positions of power that respect what we're carrying, and see the work that we do.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Yeah.
Masiha. Dr. Maneesha, Professor Menon, you would like to add to that, answer that?
Yes,
Next.
actually, we would like to basically look at some of the good practice efforts which your organization has been taking in terms of ensuring protection of land rights and also of indigenous communities. So we would request you to send whatever good practices which you have been able to ensure in the communities around you. We will be happy to look at that, and then we'll be able to respond.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Sir, before we take Brijesh Kumar Sinha, who's the chairman of Agrani Bharat Abhiyan, can I also request Arvind Tiwari, chairman of CRDG, also, if he wants to put up a question. Agarni ji, if you are able to unmute and ask a question, please go ahead. Next, we follow with Arvind Tiwari ji.
जी प्रणाम आपको.
Pranam sir.
Arvind Tiwari, chairman NGO CRDG Foundation, and our NGO is working on the 5 fields. It is education, environment, health, self-employment, and cow protection. If we look into all these 5 things and combine it in various combinations, it covers all the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, all the 17. It encompasses all those things. And with all these 5 things, we are working with the different teams to establish Center of Excellences, Utkrishta Kendra. It means, suppose there is a center where they require education, means education which we are feeling they are not having. So the education requiring that particular place will be imparted to them, and all other 4 things will be put around. And they become self-dependent, self-sustainable, and they move on from there. With respect to all these things, what Amrita University has brought in, an inaugural address by Dr. Maneesha ji, and especially I was moved by Ammaji's video, which says we have to take care of the honeybees. I always talk, tree plantation is not an environment totality. Tree plantation is one of the aspects, and that too, it is a very scientific things, which Amma has stated very beautifully, that you have to have everything in such a distance that these bees are survived because they are the biggest servant of the agriculturist, and they work without taking anything, rather they give you in return also. So we work on all those principles, and we are working. We have just started our journey in this field, and we are getting connected through various gurukuls and other things. And we have started collaborating so that we can increase our horizon and we can make a difference. And recently we have launched one group, Global Oneness Design. In this, we have collaborated and we are working with international teams, how the whole world can become one earth as it is, because ayam nija paro veti gadana laguchetasam udar charitanam tu vasudhaiv kutumbakam. We have to work on these principles. We have to shed our
Dr. Arvind, sorry, we have to move on because we have not been able to move into the subgroup, sub-team discussions also. So we would like you to kindly share some of the good practices through email, and then we will continue to have engagements in the future programs also. There are many events which we are planning. Thank you.
Definitely, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Menon also, and thank you so much, everybody here. This was an indicative of the array of responses and collaborations we are looking at. You're most welcome to connect to us over the email, please, and also to put it on the chat. We are recording the chat and we'll find the space and the time to get back to you appropriately. We are also trying to call numerous organizations and connect them with us. Our team was on a full energy regarding these. And please do put in a word somewhere and it will give us a hint to connect with you. Thank you very much.
Dr. Brijesh Kumar Sinha, Agrani Bharat Abhiyan, is he able to unmute?
सबसे पहले आप सभी लोगों का आभार हम लोग व्यक्त करते हैं कि आप सभी लोग इतने अच्छे तरीके से इस प्रोग्राम को कर रहे हैं और हमारे जैसे जितने भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हैं उनको एक प्रोत्साहन मिल रहा है। बेसिकली अग्रणी भारत अभियान फाउंडेशन ट्रस्ट एक सोशल इकोनॉमिक रूप में काम कर रहा है। इसमें हम लोग ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग को बहुत ज़्यादा प्रमोट कर रहे हैं, प्लस सोलर एनर्जी को भी प्रमोट करने का कोशिश कर रहे हैं और हेल्थ केयर से रिलेटेड कैंप, मेडिकल कैंप जिसमें आयुर्वेद से रिलेटेड चीज़ों को आगे बढ़ाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। फिलहाल हम लोग जो हैं लगभग 8 स्टेट में इसको वर्क कर रहे हैं और इस वर्क में सबसे बड़ी खासियत ये है कि विदाउट एनी डोनेशन, विदाउट एनी फाइनेंशियल हेल्प हम लोग ये सारा काम को कर रहे हैं और कोशिश कर रहे हैं इसको देश भर में ले जाने के लिए। निरंतर हमारा वॉलंटियर, हमारे पदाधिकारी अलग अलग स्टेट से अलग अलग दिशाओं में काम कर रहे हैं। लेकिन बेसिकली हम लोग का 3 जो मोटिव है, क्योंकि अगर पर्यावरण को जीरो स्तर पर लाना है, जो पर्यावरण की स्थिति खराब हो रही है, तो हमको लगता है कि पूरी डिजाइनिंग अगर एक खास क्षेत्र में ना होके अगर पूरी डिजाइनिंग को किया जाए, आमने सामने हम लोग जब बैठें और बात हो तो बहुत सारा चीज जो है, छोटा छोटा चीज जो है ला करके उसको हम लोग अच्छे तरीके से कर सकते हैं। क्योंकि सिर्फ एक क्षेत्र को अगर हम लोग चुनते हैं, दैट मीन्स अगर सोलर एनर्जी को चुनते हैं, ग्रीन एनर्जी को चुनते हैं, बाकी चीजों को छोड़ देते हैं तो
सर क्षमा करिए, समय कम है और भावनाएं विचार बहुत ज्यादा हैं, तो संक्षिप्त में आपने रख दिया, हम उसको आगे बढ़ाएंगे। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर। और प्लीज हमारी ईमेल आईडी जो ग्रुप में है उससे हमसे जुड़ने की कोशिश करिए। हम उत्तर भारत में भी सभी प्रकार के संस्थानों से जुड़ने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं सर। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। With this we have come to the end of the open house session, and it's an indeed honor to have all this wonderful representation from across the spectrum. After this we have a very interesting session, and all those who have been waiting to pitch your comments and ideas, please to join the breakout sessions which is going to happen currently. We are going to break out in each of the sub themes that we mentioned and discussed currently.
Dr. Maneesha, we must thank these 105 people who are still here, in spite of the fact that, we ran short of time.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for staying back. Thank you very much. That shows commitment and compassion. And that shows, also the fact that, we are all really together in this very noble endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for each one of you. I think each of the team heads have come up with a summary. I think we can ask the team leaders to summarize what they have brought in, I think.
Sure.
So let's proceed to the sub-theme presentations, starting with theme number 1. Can we have the presentations for the theme number 1, climate resilience and social justice? We have an allotted time of 5 minutes. I request the presenter to please stick to the time as we are already running short of.
So basically, I think we had a very good discussion, and I think a lot more time could have been spent, but what we had got as the major topics, one of them are with respect to how we utilize the existing data and the data-driven technologies so that the communities can be empowered with resilience factors, and how can we actually bring in last mile connectivity for disaster risk reduction. And another major point which came in with respect to the topics which we wanted to identify was how do we actually collect the traditional practices which are relevant, which are already existing in the communities, so that we can utilize that for building climate resilience. Very important point was like how to demystify the climate change jargon, and how do you involve the people into it, and how can we present this climate change in a presentable form to the vulnerable communities. So what is the change we have to bring in? And I think some of them I may not have captured fully. And how do we present the products which we come in into the prawn people, into the prawn communities, and how we will make. And I think if Dr. Tarak is there, I think I have missed typing in his points. Maybe you can just add on, sir.
Yeah, it is only about the funding mechanism. There was in COP27, there started the discussion of damage and loss fund that to the most vulnerable countries and communities from climate change. That was one of the recommendations, but there is no any details on how that can be funded. This kind of like, new funding mechanism. So I think
Funding mechanism.
adding funding mechanism to support climate resilience initiatives.
Funding mechanism, climate resilience. So, and what other major things which came in is how do we can involve the areas where the tribal community is prevalent? How do we look into agroforestry, wetlands, etc., and its management aspects? Another major thing which came was how the education can be brought in from the school level and also encourage youth to involve in that. So how can we bring in the conversations that can be developed with the youth involvement, and how low-cost accessible devices can be used by the community? How do we bring in that capacity building, and at the same time, how do you bring in through that? How do you bring in the disaster resilience? And one of the major things which came in was community members, the educational practices that need to be brought in into the community members, so that that resilience can be built in and the low-cost devices can be made use. Another major point which was coming was how we can bring in the opportunities for pollution management of water resources, air, etc. What are the gaps today prevalent in those areas? Capacity building on a community level. What are the variations and what are the interventions you need with respect to the community aspects? As he said, financial literacy, then percolate each and every action. How can we bring in a systematic approach for this percolating each and every action, and how we should make a mandatory knowledge initiative program, knowledge driven systems in each and every education system, and make it mandatory. That was another suggestion which came in. Then how to make sure that social justice is provided to the communities, and how the adaptation and vulnerability to the communities can be taken care of, and looking at the policies with the idea that leave no one behind. And saving lives and protecting livelihoods through compassion-driven research, early warning technologies for early warning and management for disaster risk reduction. How do you bring in compliance and enforcement of the current policies and schemes? How do you build community-based DRR and community-scale resilience? And how do you look into the impact of global warming, sea level rise, and extreme events, because they vary, their impact varies spatially and temporally. So how do you make your policies, or how do you make your systems amicable and adaptable to work based on that, and how that thresholds can be adaptable? And how do you look into the climate justice, and looking into, with respect to social justice, the environmental refugees, the internally displaced people, marginalized and excluded communities, and migrant laborers, how that social justice aspect will be looked into. And the climate impacts, which is contributing to poverty, hunger, deprivation, malnutrition, how that those policies and those interventions can be looked into it. And another major gap is the non-existent of proper education, training, certification, and policies of DRR in communities, schools, youth, etc. So how that can be brought in, and bringing in technologies, methodologies, and best practice. How do you actually dive deep into the society, these details? How do you make sure that it reaches to the grassroots level? And how to bring in the schemes for enforcement and compliance, the monitoring, assessment, and ensuring, and developing collaborative partnership, especially cooperation among regional communities, because always hazards doesn't understand our boundary. So it just percolates between the countries, between the boundaries. So how do you work together to come up with policies, and how do you look into policies which are relevant in nearby neighboring countries and develop regional cooperations? Then the recommendation for subcommittee to prepare policy brief. Amrita ma'am said that she is willing to contribute. Tarak Rashid sir, Tobias, Vinith, and Philo and Shri all of them have willingly said that they are very happy to actually contribute in preparing the policy brief and proposing events wholeheartedly. Actually, Avrajda ma'am and Kapil and Tobias and Shernas, all of them have said that they are willing to do the different events either online or in person, based on what we will have further discussions with them in detail in developing these events. And recommendations for subcommittee, I think we will work with the policy group itself and see whom we can actually work with, because there was no other name came in at that point. Identifying country or regional representatives, here we, both Tobias and Tarak sir, both of them has conveyed that they are willing to actually organize and participation from their country, especially Tarak sir said the US area, and Tobias said he's from Kenya, but he's willing to champion in the whole African region. And I think Shri also has said that she's also willing to contribute in that way. So these are the key points from this group, team 1. Thank you.
Dr. Maneesha, thank you very much, and thank you very much for keeping up the time. Can I invite theme 2, sub-theme 2 for the presentation, which is environmental sustainability?
Okay, yeah, we also covered quite a lot of similar topics. Actually, I see a lot of overlap with whatever Dr. Maneesha has presented from theme 1. So many of these topics were also discussed in our theme. And can I request Dr. Vishwanathan? He made very strong and very good suggestions on how we should be carrying forward some of the issues. Dr. Vishwanathan, sir, are you there? Yeah, see, particularly the submission of the concept note, we requested all the participants who made their suggestions to submit a written concept note latest by 10th February, so that we can compile all these various details and submit a consolidated document for further discussions, for further consolidation. Yeah, please, Dr. Vishwanathan, please go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I have listed some points which I just wanted to read out. One is, as already has been mentioned, there should be a behavioral change across stakeholders with respect to treating environment and environmental management per se. Second one, I talked about enhancing business responsibility against the greenwashing, which is already happening. Then the third point I wanted to highlight is about the G20 countries moving towards a mandated CSR regime, as India has already adopted a mandated CSR regime. So many countries can actually adopt the mandated CSR regime, where the impact can be much more as we are envisaging. Fourthly, there is a need for breaking the historic nexus between water and energy in the process of achieving food security across the G20 countries. Then the other point I wanted to highlight is there's a need to understand the social and environmental outcomes of these technologies, because many technologies we are having, we don't know whether they are actually serving the purpose of in terms of environmental as well as societal outcome. Then the other point I wanted to highlight is enhancing access to environmental technologies in terms of like in the case of farming, we have a lot of energy and water saving technologies which are available. And when it comes to access to such technologies, we really lack in terms of incentives or subsidy subsidy systems, etc. And even in the case of medium enterprise, small and medium enterprises also, we have to think in terms of the adoption of clean technologies, carbon emission reduction strategies, etc. How to enhance these kind of adoption of technologies. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight is about understanding the sector-specific policies across countries and their coherence in terms of achieving environmental sustainability. And finally, also identifying and scaling up of the best management practices, which are udaharans across countries as promoted by the civil society organization. That's all from me. I'm Shri. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Vishwanathan. And Nakul Sharma ji also explained his position regarding cancer. So he was more particular about the pollution aspects, which are too obvious that these are affected many of the cities in most of the global south in particular. So how best are we dealing with this, and what is the status of technology transfer? Are the developed countries willing to transfer the technology to the countries who are not that well off and whose technology is not up to that standard? So all those good practices we really needed to grab on from the listed G20 members. So there was a question, how do we actually go about listing those subsectors, particularly on environmental sustainability from G20 group? And one solution was that we need to form a particular WhatsApp group for environmental sustainability, wherein various members can participate and submit their various submissions. And Jenny Raj also suggested that Jenny Raj and Tobias, they are actually practicing on afforestation, and they have some very good successful udharans to submit. Jenny Raj has been talking about Costa Rica, and in collaboration with German collaborators, they have done it. And Tobias in Kenya, they have developed various very successful forest covers. Now the question was whether they did it in private lands or government allotted them the land, or was it a combined effort of public-private partnership? So these are the aspects wherein we are really looking for very good udharans actually. And then there were other contributions, other inputs from various other participants. Basically, the question was whether behavioral change from the society is also per se part of the environmental sustainability. And I think my response was that yes, definitely the attitude of the people is very important, because these socioeconomic considerations, the background, they are important, particularly when certain policies are to be implemented. Any major policy issue or major recommendations or such good practices, if they are to be implemented, then people's participation is very important, and their behavior and their attitude towards these new interventions, it has to be really taken care. It has to be really brought up. So therefore, behavioral change and community resilience is really important. So I see a lot of overlap between the different groups, and particularly our group is, it's such a vast spectrum. So there's a lot of overlap. And we'll be coming out with the initial first draft of the concept note latest by 10th February. That's what I have requested all the participants, all the members to please submit in writing.
Dr. Devshish, Dr. Vadhavan, thank you very much. Many people are expressing, their need to leave because of, various other meetings.
Sure, sir. Sure. Go ahead.
So, Dr. Devshish, we can have the other two presentations very fast, quick.
Yes, sir. In fact, can we have the net zero emissions group presentation?
Hello, everyone. I'll quickly present the discussions that were done in the theme 3, breakout sessions. So, of course, there was this the idea of binary, where you first decarbonize the entire energy sector and then you focus on the non-energy sector like agriculture and others. While doing that, it was also identified that, energy efficiency is needed across the board for all the sectors. And then there was discussion on the enablers, like who will finance it, what kind of technology you need, what kind of partnerships and collaborations are needed for reaching out for, achieving the net zero or for this decarbonization journey. There were suggestions from the participants that we also need to integrate the high emitting sectors or the subsectors within each of these sectors with the mitigation, with enablers that will help to reach the mitigation targets very soon. There was this question, there was this concern raised about ensuring livelihood creation while we, are on our journey for net zero, especially when we talk about auto rickshaw drivers and vendors who use automobiles. So as we shift to e-vehicles, how are we going to ensure their livelihood is sustained? we had discussions on how to gather data from countries, both developed and developing countries. We presented our own work, which is about the power sector, where we have this comprehensive dashboard cutting across the energy sector, giving it's like a one-stop destination to get all the data. And then there was discussion like, why can't we also go beyond the energy, non-energy binary and have more buckets for identification of mitigation goals? There was so to move forward, this was just I'm just giving the crux of the discussion, and for working ahead, what we have done is we have requested all the 30+ participants that we had in our group to share the best practices, what we are calling as udharans, to us and with the Amrita University team through their emails and sending out their suggestions. We have shared our email IDs with them, and we have requested the team members from the Amrita University to share the email ID so that we can quickly put this together. And we also talked about the 8th event that Vasudha Foundation in association with the Amrita University and CANSA is organizing. And I would again request people here to take part in it, like either in person or online. So thank you. I'll end here and we'll move on to the fourth group.
Thank you so much, Rini ma'am. Let's move on to the fourth one. Professor Menon.
Yes, Dr. Sriram will make this presentation. It will be very brief. I want to thank Ambassador Vijay Nambiar ji for coming back and joining us again. And he's back here. And we are very grateful that we had very enriching discussions in the sub-theme groups. Over to you, Dr. Sriram.
Thank you. So, I just want to make sure, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So very quickly, this particular sub-theme naturally, I think, had to have some connotations related to the psychological, the social psychological, and the philosophical as well, since it has the two keywords of compassion and resilience. Now, one of the first points was looking at the attitude, because without that, it felt like none of this could work. So one of the points made was, when we look at any products that are being made, designed and made, we have to look at the what, how, and why we produce. And that's where the attitude comes into the design itself. So it's a matter of not looking at just the economic value, but the social and cultural and spiritual values as well. There was one about mainstreaming resilience. So there are actually efforts going on with this. And Mr. Roy Ligo of Egypt, who also works in India, mentioned about this in particular. And the role of advocacy of volunteerism in this regard of mainstreaming resilience. One important point was about people with disability or with special needs, and how we could also involve them in raising the awareness on climate change and seek their participation as well. I think that could bring in some very new and fresh perspectives. Then Major Ajit has had a lot of experience working in the remote areas of Meghalaya. And so he spoke about the livelihood models and how those are important. I think somebody else touched upon this as well. So looking at very viable business models related to livelihood, income generation, and so on. And he's also volunteered to serve as a coordinator for Northeast. So we have a few names. We've asked the others to send their information by email. Another very important aspect was about the fact that education tends to be top-down, not just in India, but in other places as well. And so we have to look at how, when we look at the bottom-up, how is it that they could be empowered to participate and contribute to the compassion-oriented approaches? Are they really empowered now? And Professor Menon also spoke about how faith should be a unifier, not a divider, and how we could look at the broad-based processes that are more inclusive in nature. An interesting point made from Kenya, Dr. Julia mentioned about their work in terms of compassion with respect to the elder care. And they have a lot of volunteers who also do the health support for the elders. And one of the suggestions given was that these elders, whatever trees they've planted, we are benefiting from their shade now. And but they are not in a position to plant trees. So if we could do the planting on their behalf. In terms of some recommendations to prepare the policy briefs, the discussion said that we could have more participatory appraisals in designing sustainability assessment frameworks, build in inclusivity and customization, and take due consideration of social media platforms. Just to save time, a combination of 3 and 4, where we brainstormed on some events and udaharans as well. So the team would send emails with the udaharans. One of the things that was raised was whether we have a portal for uploading the case studies and udaharans. I think this is something that the main administrative team could take up.
Yeah, that is coming up. Once we have udaharans, a committee will be evaluating, and then it will be coming up. And later we will have a workshop with presenting all the udaharans also.
Sure. The last 2 points. One is about building active citizenship. I think our university and all universities, I think, could be fantastic in terms of this. If we just take this up and scale it up, I think we immediately have a like 0 to 100 kind of a situation where we give very, very high quality active citizenship. The last one is also very interesting. How do we identify change agents out in the field, in the community? How do we identify the existing champions and how do we make them known, bring more exposure? So this could also bring higher quality inputs into the policy design and for the guideline design. So that's all I have from.
Thank you very much,
Dr.
Professor.
Vinod, I'm sorry, Debashish, can I get 30 seconds, please?
Absolutely.
Sasangan here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a quick observation. Give me 30 seconds. I think all the groups, I see a lot of focus on India. We might want to look at being a bit diverse and also inclusive. The second point I wanted to bring was this education. Education in the sense I'm talking about the next generation and the one after that, and the behavioral changes. These two cut across the entire the sustainability and SRC. So it is very difficult for us to sit here and say it will only fit into a certain sub-thematic. So maybe Dr. Vinod and Dr. Maneesha can figure out how this can be, it goes across. Where we used to use bicycle to travel 1 kilometer, now we're using motorbike. So it clearly cuts into your net zero. So how do we bring about this change, this mentality where Dutch people travel by bicycle to the main station and travel by commuter train? So it cuts across. I thought I'll bring up these 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Very good point, sir.
Can I just respond to that? This is actually not restricted to only India, because we have many distinguished participants who have actually registered and also joined in from Kenya, from Egypt, from Indonesia, from Bangladesh, and also from the region, not only in the South Asia region, but also from Africa and also from Europe.
Netherlands, Egypt. We have.
Netherlands, yes, and also a few more. We have also even now, Philo is there, and then we have many others who are there.
Pakistan.
Yes.
Okay, understood. Just being a bit more diverse might help.
Yeah, and also there is from Pakistan. So we have actually people who are concerned about some of these, and then I must also mention that we have to thank them for staying so late, in spite of the fact that we have really overrun in terms of the time. But thank you very much for the passion and the compassion.
I think I can see 2 hand raised. Can I quickly give that opportunity, sir?
Yes, please.
Dr. Surya Prakash ji.
Yes, madam. Good evening. And we can reduce the global surface temperature below 15 degrees centigrade by harnessing geothermal energy from the hydrothermal vents of the mid-ocean ridge and the active volcanoes of the dry land mass. The contribution of geothermal energy in the global surface temperature has not been included in so far. So far, the scientists were of the opinion that the entire global surface temperature is due to sunlight. That was a basic mistake. The contribution of geothermal energy is as much as the sunlight, and the geothermal energy can be converted into electricity, and its contribution can be reduced, and the aggregate global surface temperature can be reduced from 16.2 to 14, 13. We can bring the ice age. The technology is well established, and it is there. The active volcanoes can generate electricity. It is already demonstrated in Iceland. The geothermal, the man-made company, and the Korean company has developed the technology to harness geothermal energy from the hydrothermal.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Surya Prakashji. We have noted your point. We'll follow it up. Dr. Maneesha, you want to take any more hand?
I think I can see Murali Rangarajan.
Yes, good evening. I'll make this very, very brief. Following up on what Dr. Shangan said, I think it would be really nice from the overall organizing committee to help us out with identifying representatives or members from across the G20 nations and observation nations, from observer nations, from whom we can also collect these best practices, as well as understand where the present status of their journey towards all these aspects of building sustainable resilient communities are, and so that the recommendations that we make would be much more holistic.
Thank you. I can see Pradeep Mohapatra's hand raised.
Yeah, Pradeep Mohapatra from Udyama, Bhubaneswar.
Pradeep, are you there?
Pradeep Mohapatra.
Yeah, namaste. Namaste, sir. Namaste.
Namaste.
So it's a very good discussion, and I am very grateful to you all. It is
sir, camera.
It's enlisted here, but it's a whole gamut of discussion. Is this I have never heard. It's putting the lifestyle. It is part of this climate resilience, and it's because the lifestyle is major chunk right now, starting from local to global. And I think that has to be highlighted somewhere else, because whatever you do, because now it is climate community resilience, because we practice community resilience and interconnecting it is food, water, culture, nature, life, livelihood, and lifestyle. Because this is a local, unless you have a local connectivity, you cannot have a global outreach. So that it is community resilience. The way that no one is left behind, this is the same thing that if no one is resilient and everyone is not resilient. So that this is the whole gamut of discussion that lifestyle is major chunk. It is grossly affecting this life food systems, even if it is life education systems, even if health systems, and even if it is whatever it is. We should make a note that is how best it will be incorporated in the whole gamut of our C20 or G20 like this lifestyle. How this lifestyle? This one. Second thing, if it is community resilience or climate change, it is well connected to every sector. It is not an isolated program, and unless there is a greater connectivity, interconnected programs, it is resilience or its adaptation may not be taken place. So that it is a holistic program or an integrated program that has to be discussed, and we can discuss later on with its major groups, and we can highlight all these things. Thanks everybody, and it is giving me opportunity, and we can discuss later on that is what are the critical comments and its critical elements that can be incorporated. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Over to Debashish.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maneesha. We have a short video which is detailing the work of the various sub-themes. Can we play that, please, Vaishak?
കഴിഞ്ഞ വർഷം അനേക പ്രകൃതി ദുരന്തങ്ങൾക്കും സംഘർഷങ്ങൾക്കും ലോകം സാക്ഷ്യം വഹിച്ചു. പ്രളയം നമുക്കൊരു താക്കീതായിരുന്നു, സന്ദേശമായിരുന്നു. സ്വാർത്ഥമായ താൽക്കാലിക ലാഭങ്ങൾക്ക് വേണ്ടി പ്രകൃതി ചൂഷണം ചെയ്യാൻ തുടങ്ങിയിട്ട് കാലങ്ങൾ കുറേയായി. അതിൻ്റെ ദിഗ്ധഫലമാണ് നമ്മൾ കണ്ടത്.
Thank you very much, Vaishak. With that, we have come to the last leg of the program. I acknowledge all the chats we have received from everybody. We have noted all of them and we are saving the chats. We'll get back to you appropriately. Please try to connect with us over all the links that we have provided to you. As you would have already be aware that our engagement with civil society is long-term and we are passionately dedicated towards bringing a change in the people. And do please talk to us, connect to us on that perspective. With that, may I please request Professor Vinod Menon to formally announce the vote of thanks for this session.
Thank you very much. I think it has been an extremely enriching experience of having to listen to the very valuable insights and also guidance from very distinguished people whose lives have been, so remarkable. In fact, I think when you really look at the C20, we have many lessons which we can take from organizational perspective in terms of the vision of the government of India for having identified Mother Amritanandamayi as a chair, and the C20 principal coordinator, Ambassador Vijay Nambiar ji, who has actually been phenomenally, transformational diplomat. At the same time, also looking at humanity from the point of view of humanitarian response as India's permanent representative in the United Nations, which finally saw him as the Under-Secretary General of the UN and Special Advisor to the Secretary General, and also, very significant contributions as the Chief of Staff for the UN Secretary General. And we have seen that during the conflict in Ukraine, we have seen the problems which the communities were facing because of the massive, damage which has been faced by structures and also by human beings who had to flee. And this is also not just in Ukraine. This has also been happening across the world in terms of conflicts in Syria, in Lebanon, in Jordan, and in many countries. And in Afghanistan, we are aware of what is happening in terms of the issues related to the discrimination against women. So there are many concerns where, humanity needs to take, a very serious review of how we are looking at social processes. And the government of India chose people like Ambassador Vijay Nambiar ji to be basically coordinating these 14 working groups, which are actually putting together a lot of synthesized distilled wisdom from delegates from around the world, not only G20 countries, but also invited guest countries. And so we feel that this is actually a huge opportunity for all of us to work together beyond national boundaries. So because this is something where humanity at large is facing climate change, extreme events. We have seen this happening, not only just floods and urban floods, and we've seen heat waves. We have seen wildfires, which have been happening in many countries. So all these are important, that we look at opportunities. And in one of the meetings which was held towards the end of the year, when the United Nations actually conducts what is called the end of the year press conferences, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres mentioned that geopolitical divides have made global problem solving ever more difficult. He announced that there is a decision and there is a need to make 2020 a year for peace, a year for action, not a time to sit on the sidelines. It's a time for resolve, and yes, even hope. And he feels that there is a need for looking at hope and looking at compassion, looking at opportunities to bring civil societies to come together, to work with governments, to work with communities, to work with corporates, to work with donor agencies, to work with international agencies. So I'm very grateful that we have this opportunity with people like Ambassador Vijay Nambiar ji, Dr. Mrityunjay Mohapatra, the Director General IMD, Indian Meteorological Department, Mr. Agendra Kumar from ESRI India, who has also promised the support of ESRI India for C20 in terms of looking at the geoinformatics solutions for the 14 working groups. I think that is a huge opportunity for not only for India, but also for the rest of the world, where we have many concerns which we need to bring in. And we would like to also thank Swami Swarupananda ji, Amritaswarupananda ji for the support and the guidance, and also sharing Amma's insights and vision for looking at compassion and attitudes of love and reverence of working with communities. I think that's very important. We would also like to thank specifically the Climate Action Network South Asia, Sanjay Vasisht and his team, and Dr. Srinivas, Krishnaswamy and his team from Vasudha Foundation, and all the faculty members of Amrita University, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, under the leadership of Dr. Maneesha. This has been an extremely tiring and challenging, with a lot of last minute changes in terms of the program schedule, where we've also had the we were looking forward to looking at the inputs also from Mr. Amitabh Kant, the G20 Sherpa, but he got tied up in another meeting in Mumbai and also in between flights, and so he has not been able to join us. We would also like to thank all the faculty members of Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham who have joined us and given their inputs, very valuable inputs, and all the distinguished delegates from all over the world who have actually joined and also stayed so late. In fact, I feel that this is actually stretching time zones, working across time zones. Thank you very much for staying so late, and very special thanks to all the distinguished resource persons. Very special thanks also to Dr. Debashish Brahma for very efficient, coordination of a very challenging event with different time zones, people, across different countries. Thank you very much. Look forward to continued interaction with all of you, and also must mention Amritanandamayi's contribution in terms of putting everything together, because we're really seeing extremely challenging in terms of organizing an event like this. It's not just 3 hours, it has actually gone into more than 4 hours and 18 minutes. So thank you very much, and thank you all very much, and Namaskar and compassion to
thank you all very much
for the light. Yes.
Thank you all very much. And I just wanted to read out one of the comments which came in chat from Runjim Agarwal from Arizona State University, one of the #1 university in the THE impact ranking for all the best practices. I was wondering whether there would be interest in analyzing these case studies beyond just collection. If so, can you please share how we plan to do this? Perhaps our colleagues from academia can help with this, and I would be happy to contribute. I think it is a different dimension which is coming up for how we can scale up the best practices to other areas, and how academicians are willing to take forward this initiative. Thank you so much for each one of you joining. Nambiar sir, thank you so much. Vinod sir, thank you so much. Everybody, it's beyond words. It is really thankful Swamiji's presence. Dr. Mrityunjay, actually he came from the hospital. I couldn't even imagine that even when his mother is not well, he took the time off to come and present such a long, inspiring talk on all the thematic areas. And Dr. Agendra also has taken the time off and then explained everything in detail. So I can see the multi-country perspective. I could see the regional cooperation. I think we all put together the effort. I think we will be able to take forward. And thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Ambassador Vijay Nambiar, would you like to say something more?
Nothing except to say that it's been a most heartening experience and I've learned so much. And I think most of all, I think it's the mix of your professional commitment and the deep humanitarian commitment that all of you have shown. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Namaskar. Thank you, everyone.
Namaste. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a great night ahead. Bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
Yes, sir. It was nice to see you, sir.
Chechi, namaskar.
Namaskar, Wishes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really good
Chechi.
work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.